Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, the tile looked intact, clean, smooth, no signs of damage. But when stepped on, the floor gave slightly, like something beneath had rotted. They pulled up the first row and uncovered layers of cloth, stitched together with thick thread. Buried deep between them was a locket filled with ashes. Rachel Morgan had spent her entire adult life in the small town of Clearwater, Nebraska. At 42, she had become a fixture in the community, a high school English teacher who directed the spring play each year and volunteered weekends at the local animal shelter. People described her as methodical, caring, dedicated. A woman whose classroom was organized with almost mathematical precision, whose lesson plans were completed months in advance. The modest two-bedroom home on Spruce Avenue had been hers for 16 years. She'd purchased it after her divorce from Thomas, a marriage that had lasted less than 3 years and produced no children. Since then, Rachel had lived alone. Her routine rarely varied: coffee at 5 a.m., teaching by 7:30, home by 4:15, an evening walk with a book or podcast, lights out by 10. She was the most predictable person I knew, said Linda Hawkins, who taught science across the hall from Rachel's classroom. That's why we noticed right away when she missed school that Monday in April. Rachel didn't miss days. She came in with the flu once, and we had to send her home. April 17th, 2023 was unlike the 2,000 Mondays that had preceded it in Rachel's teaching career. Her first class waited as the minutes ticked by. At 7:40, the school secretary called her cell phone. No answer. By 8:15, the principal had arranged for a substitute and asked the school resource officer to drive by Rachel's house. Officer James Peterson rang the doorbell 3 times before pulling out his phone to make a call. As he waited on the porch, he noticed Rachel's Honda Civic parked in the driveway. The morning newspaper lay uncollected on the front steps. Through the living room window, he could see a lamp still lit despite the morning sunlight. I had a feeling, Officer Peterson would later testify. Nothing specific, just the sense that something wasn't right. In 23 years on the job, you develop an instinct. When Rachel's sister Elaine arrived from Omaha 2 hours later with a spare key, they entered the silent house together. Everything appeared to be in order: dishes washed and put away, couch cushions perfectly aligned, mail sorted into neat stacks on the entryway table. But Rachel wasn't in her bedroom or bathroom. Her bed was made with hospital corners, towels hung perfectly straight on their racks. We were about to leave, thinking maybe she'd gone somewhere with a friend, Elaine recalled. But then Officer Peterson walked into the kitchen and I heard him say, "That's strange." The officer had noticed something about the kitchen floor. The ceramic tile in one corner seemed to give slightly under his weight. When he shifted his foot, the tiles depressed nearly half an inch, as if something soft lay underneath. It looked normal, he said, but it felt wrong, like stepping on a memory foam mattress covered by a sheet of plywood. By that afternoon, the Clearwater police had pulled up the first row of tiles. Beneath them, they discovered what appeared to be several layers of bedsheets and quilts, carefully stitched together and flattened. After removing this unusual padding, they found a section of subflooring that had been cut away and replaced. When they lifted this panel, they uncovered a small cavity, approximately 2 feet by 2 feet and 1 foot deep, dug into the foundation. Inside lay a silver heart-shaped locket containing what lab tests would later confirm were human ashes, a handwritten letter sealed in plastic, and a flash drive. Rachel Morgan was nowhere to be found. The locket contained an inscription, "Forever together, never apart." The ashes would later be identified through DNA testing as belonging to Thomas Morgan, Rachel's ex-husband, who, according to all official records, had moved to Seattle after their divorce in 2007. No death certificate had ever been filed. No one in Clearwater had seen or heard from him since the divorce. "Thomas just disappeared one day," said William Davis, who had worked with Thomas at the local lumber mill. "We all assumed he needed a fresh start after the divorce. Rachel never mentioned him again." The sealed letter was addressed to someone named Cassandra and contained what appeared to be a confession. "I did what was necessary to protect us both. He would have taken everything. The night he came back, I had no choice. I've carried this alone for 15 years. Now it's your burden too." No one in Clearwater knew anyone named Cassandra who had a connection to Rachel. The flash drive contained hundreds of photos, Thomas and Rachel in happier times, but also disturbing images of bruises on Rachel's arms and neck, dated in the months before their divorce. There were screenshots of threatening text messages and emails Thomas had sent her over the years, the most recent dated just weeks before his presumed disappearance. Detective Sarah Linden took charge of the investigation. What we had was evidence of potential domestic violence, mysterious remains, and a missing woman who may have been living with a terrible secret for over a decade, she explained. But we still didn't know where Rachel was or exactly what happened to Thomas. The investigators began piecing together a timeline. Neighbors reported that 3 weeks before her disappearance, Rachel had received multiple visits from a young woman no one recognized, petite, with dark hair, probably in her mid-20s. The two had been seen arguing on Rachel's front porch one evening. "I remember thinking it was odd because Rachel never had visitors," said George Patterson, who lived across the street. "And this girl seemed very upset, waving her hands around. Rachel kept putting her hand on the girl's shoulder like she was trying to calm her down." Interviews with Rachel's few close friends revealed that she had become increasingly anxious in the weeks before she vanished. She had changed the locks on her doors and installed a security camera at her back entrance. "She told me she had received some disturbing mail," Linda Hawkins recalled, "but she wouldn't say what it was about. I offered to let her stay with my husband and me for a few days, but she said she needed to face things on her own." The case took an unexpected turn when police identified the mysterious visitor through fingerprints found on Rachel's doorbell camera. Cassandra Wilson, 25, lived in Lincoln, about 60 miles away. When detectives traced her address, they discovered she had disappeared 3 days after Rachel. The connection between the two women remained elusive until investigators subpoenaed Rachel's phone records, revealing dozens of calls between them beginning in January 2023. A DNA comparison confirmed what some had begun to suspect. Cassandra Wilson was Thomas and Rachel Morgan's biological daughter. "We learned that Rachel had been pregnant when she filed for divorce," Detective Linden explained. "She gave the baby up for adoption immediately after birth, but apparently Cassandra had found her birth mother and reached out earlier that year." The investigation took on new urgency. 2 women connected by blood and secrets, both missing. The kitchen floor that had been hiding evidence of a potential crime for more than a decade, and somewhere the answers to questions that had lain dormant in Clearwater for years. On May 3rd, 2 weeks after Rachel's disappearance, a hiker found an abandoned car at a lookout point in the Sandhills region, about 3 hours from Clearwater. The vehicle was registered to Cassandra Wilson. Inside, investigators found 2 suitcases filled with clothing, several $1,000s in cash, and passports for both Rachel and Cassandra. Rachel's was under a different name. There was also a notebook containing what appeared to be a journal in Rachel's handwriting. The final entry read, "I thought burying the past would be enough. I was wrong. When Cassandra found me, everything changed. She deserves to know the truth, and I'm tired of living in fear. Tomorrow we leave everything behind and start over somewhere no one knows our story." As of today, neither woman has been found. The house on Spruce Avenue remains empty, the kitchen floor now permanently disrupted by the investigation. DNA testing confirmed that Thomas Morgan's remains had been cremated, though how and when he died remains undetermined. Some in Clearwater believe Rachel killed Thomas in self-defense after years of abuse, and that she and Cassandra have started new lives far away from Nebraska. Others whisper darker theories, that Cassandra discovered her mother's secret and enacted some form of vigilante justice, or that both women met with foul play connected to Thomas's mysterious death. Detective Linden, who still keeps the case file on her desk, offers a more measured perspective. "We have 2 missing women, evidence of long-term domestic violence, and remains hidden in a highly unusual manner. What we don't have are definitive answers about what happened in that house 16 years ago, or where Rachel and Cassandra are now." The kitchen floor in the house on Spruce Avenue has been repaired, the cavity filled in and new tile installed. But the residents of Clearwater know that some things can't be fixed so easily. The weight of secrets, the bonds between mother and daughter, the quiet desperation that can build over years of silence. Sometimes at night, new neighbors report hearing footsteps in the kitchen, though the house stands empty. The sound of someone pacing back and forth across a floor that no longer gives way beneath their weight, no longer hides the evidence of what happened on a night long ago when a woman decided she had endured enough. But perhaps the most haunting piece of evidence came from Rachel's journal, in an entry dated nearly a decade before her disappearance. "I dream sometimes that the floor opens up beneath me, that I fall through into darkness. In the dream, I'm not afraid of falling. I'm afraid of what might follow me up from below." Crime 2, it spun slowly, even though the power was off. Wrapped around the blades was a frayed piece of ribbon, knotted tightly in the center. When untangled, it revealed something trapped inside, an old key and a note written in crayon, "Don't open the small door." Detective Martha Klein stood in the empty bedroom of the Woodlawn home, watching as forensics carefully preserved the items. The house had been abandoned for 3 weeks since the disappearance of 8-year-old Eliza Woodlawn and her father, Timothy. The mother, Sarah Woodlawn, had been staying with relatives since reporting them missing on October 12, 2019. Martha remembered Sarah's words during their initial interview. "Tim would never just leave. He loved our daughter more than anything in this world." Sarah's trembling hands had clutched a family photo so tightly that her fingernails left small crescent marks on the frame's wooden edge. Eliza had been described as a quiet, thoughtful child who collected miniature doors she found at craft stores. Her bedroom walls were decorated with them, tiny wooden doors painted in various colors, some with tiny brass knockers, others with diminutive doorknobs you could barely turn with your fingertip. 23 of them, Sarah had counted. She always said they were portals to other places, Sarah had explained, her voice soft with memory. Places where people go when they disappear. The investigation had started routinely enough. Timothy had picked Eliza up from school on a Friday afternoon. They were supposed to go camping for the weekend at Millstream State Park, about 40 miles north of their suburban Pittsburgh neighborhood. Timothy's blue Honda Civic was found in the park's parking lot, packed with camping gear. The tent remained folded. The sleeping bags were untouched. Their phones were discovered in the glove compartment, batteries removed. A search of the surrounding forest yielded nothing. No footprints leading away from the lot, no disturbed underbrush, no articles of clothing caught on branches. It was as if father and daughter had simply vanished upon arrival. Until 3 days ago, when Sarah had finally gathered the strength to return home. She called the police station at 2:17 a.m. "The ceiling fan, it's spinning," she'd whispered into the phone, "and there's something tied to it." Martha looked again at the note in the evidence bag. The childish scrawl seemed deliberately messy, as though someone were trying to disguise their handwriting, or perhaps mimic a child's. Forensics would determine if it matched Eliza's handwriting from her school notebooks. Detective Officer Reed motioned from the hallway. "You might want to see this." He led Martha to the basement door, a narrow entrance beneath the staircase that Sarah claimed had always been kept locked. Timothy had used it for storage, nothing more. The door now stood open, revealing wooden steps descending into darkness. As they made their way down, the beam of Martha's flashlight caught the gleam of something metallic on the concrete floor. A lock, broken, next to a small wooden chest that had been pried open. "Mrs. Woodlawn says she's never seen this before," Reed said quietly. Inside the chest were several notebooks filled with Timothy's precise handwriting. Martha flipped through the first pages, her brow furrowing at the increasingly paranoid entries. April 3rd, Eliza mentioned the door in her dream again, said someone was knocking from the other side, started keeping record of the knocks, 3 short, 1 long, always at 3:17 a.m. April 17th found another small door nailed to the underside of Eliza's bed. Don't remember buying it. Sarah doesn't either. Eliza says they gave it to her. May 22nd recorded the knocking. Playing it backward reveals what sounds like a child counting, not Eliza's voice. The entries continued, growing more disturbing as Timothy documented his daughter's increasingly bizarre behavior and his own mounting obsession with the phenomenon. The final entry, dated October 11th, the day before they disappeared, contained only 4 words. "We found the key. Detective, it was the forensics tech from upstairs. We found something else in the ceiling fan." He held out another evidence bag. Inside was a Polaroid photograph showing Timothy and Eliza standing in front of what appeared to be a small doorway built into the trunk of a massive oak tree. Both were smiling, though their eyes seemed vacant. The photo was dated October 12th, 2019, the day they disappeared. Martha returned to the basement, her flashlight beam sweeping methodically across the walls. In the farthest corner, partially hidden behind an old water heater, she found it, a small door, no more than 2 feet high, seamlessly integrated into the wall. Its wooden surface was intricately carved with spiraling patterns that seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. A tiny brass keyhole gleamed in the center. The search for the Woodlawns intensified after the discovery. The FBI became involved. The small door was removed from the wall, revealing only solid concrete behind it. The key from the ceiling fan didn't fit its lock. Ground-penetrating radar detected no cavities or tunnels beneath the house or yard. 3 months passed. The case grew cold despite national media attention. Sarah Woodlawn moved away. unable to live with the constant reminders of her loss. Then came the letter postmarked from a town in New Mexico that didn't exist according to any map. Inside was a crayon drawing of a smiling girl standing next to a tall figure. On the back, in childish handwriting, "We found all the doors, Mommy. Don't look for us." Handwriting analysis confirmed it was Eliza's. The paper contained microscopic traces of an unidentified fungal spore not native to any documented species in North America. 6 months later, a hiker in Millstream State Park discovered something unusual, a small wooden door built into the trunk of an ancient oak tree, exactly matching the one from the Polaroid photograph. Park rangers insisted it had never been there before. When opened, it revealed only the solid interior of the tree. But carved into the wood inside was a fresh message. October 12th, 3:17 a.m. On that date, at precisely that time, Sarah Woodlawn returned to the park alone, against the explicit instructions of the investigation team. Park security cameras captured her approach to the oak tree, where she stood for several minutes before reaching toward what appeared to be an opening in the trunk, though no door was visible in the footage. The recording showed a brief flash of light, and then Sarah was gone. 3 park rangers, 2 police officers, and a forensic team examined the tree at dawn. They found no door, no opening, no sign of disturbance. Only a small ribbon tied around a low-hanging branch, and inside it, 3 keys of unknown origin. The search for the Woodlawn family continues to this day. The case remains officially open, though active investigation has largely ceased. Timothy's journals are now studied by psychology researchers interested in shared delusions and Foley family. In the Woodlawn home, which remains unsold and empty, neighbors occasionally report the sound of a ceiling fan spinning in the night, though the electricity has long been disconnected. Some claim to hear knocking, 3 short, 1 long, coming from somewhere inside the walls. Police have investigated these reports 17 times. They have found nothing. But they have never checked at exactly 3:17 a.m. Some mysteries don't want to be solved, some doors aren't meant to be opened, and sometimes when a family disappears, the only clues left behind are the ones they wanted you to find. The ceiling fan stopped spinning years ago, but the questions it raised continue to turn endlessly in the minds of those who remember the Woodlawn case, spinning slowly, deliberately, like something waiting to be untangled. Crime 3, the walls were covered top to bottom in mirrors, some cracked, some spotless. They reflected every angle of the tiny space, but something didn't line up. One mirror showed a man sitting in the corner, motionless. There was no one there, but the floor beneath that corner was warm. When Detective Laurel Simmons first stepped into Storage Unit 237 at Safekeep Storage in Millfield, Oregon, she felt the air grow heavy around her. It was October 2019, and the morning fog still clung to the industrial complex on the outskirts of town. The facility manager, Dale Kershaw, stood nervously behind her, keys jangling in his trembling hands. "I've been managing this place for 11 years, he whispered, "and I've never seen anything like this." The storage unit belonged to Thomas Whitley, a 42-year-old high school art teacher who had lived in Millfield his entire life. Thomas was known for his quiet demeanor and his dedication to his students. His colleagues described him as methodical, particular about his classroom arrangements, and somewhat reserved, but always willing to stay after hours to help a struggling student. He lived alone in a small bungalow 3 blocks from Millfield High, where he had taught for nearly 2 decades. Thomas's sister, Elaine, had reported him missing 3 weeks earlier when he didn't show up for their monthly Sunday dinner. It wasn't like Thomas to miss their standing appointment, a tradition they'd maintained since their parents passed away 5 years before. Elaine had tried calling, then drove to his house, only to find it perfectly ordered, as if he'd stepped out for a moment and intended to return. His car was in the driveway. His wallet sat on the kitchen counter. His phone remained plugged into the charger beside his bed. The investigation had turned up few lights until Dale Kershaw called the police station, reporting that Thomas's storage unit payment was overdue, unusual for someone who had never missed a payment in 6 years. When the police obtained a warrant to search the unit, no one expected to find what they did. The mirrors were installed sometime in the last 2 months, Dale explained, keeping his distance from the open unit. He asked permission to make alterations, said he was working on an art installation. Detective Simmons moved carefully through the 10 by 15-foot space, cataloging what she saw. The mirrors created an infinite regression of reflections, making the small unit seem vast and disorienting. In the center of the concrete floor sat a single wooden chair. A small table beside it held a leather-bound journal, a fountain pen, and a half-empty glass of water. The water looked fresh. What troubled Detective Simmons most was the mirror on the far wall, slightly larger than the others and framed in ornate carved wood. In its reflection, she could see the back of a man's head, sitting in the corner where no chair existed. When she turned to look directly at that corner, there was nothing there, just empty space. But when she placed her hand on the floor, she felt warmth radiating through the concrete. Thomas's journal provided the first real clues. The earliest entries were mundane, notes about his classes, comments about new art techniques he wanted to try, occasional mentions of dreams. But around March, the entries began to change. Thomas wrote about seeing movement in his bathroom mirror when he was alone in the house, then reflections that didn't match his actions, then a face watching him from the mirror, a face he described as almost mine but not quite. By June, Thomas had purchased the mirrors for his storage unit. His entries became increasingly focused on what he called the physics of reflection and doorways between places. He wrote about experiments with light and perception, and about a theory that mirrors could capture images from other times or places if arranged in specific configurations. The final entry, dated September 23rd, read simply, "I see him clearly now. He sees me too. Tonight I'll try to cross over." As the investigation continued, officers canvassed Thomas's neighbors and colleagues for information. Most expressed shock at his disappearance, describing him as reliable and creatures of habit. One colleague, however, mentioned that Thomas had seemed distracted in recent months. He kept talking about some research project, said Diane Fletcher, who taught English at the high school. Something about reflective surfaces and dimensional theory. I figured it was for an advanced art class. A student reported that Mr. Whitley had asked unusual questions in class about whether anyone had ever seen something strange in a mirror, something that shouldn't be there. He seemed really interested when Kevin mentioned that sometimes he thought he saw someone else in the mirror out of the corner of his eye, the student told police. Forensics revealed no signs of violence in the storage unit. No blood, no signs of struggle. Thomas's fingerprints were the only ones found on the journal, the chair, the table, and the glass. The security footage from Safekeep showed Thomas entering the facility on September 23rd at 9:17 p.m. The footage showed him carrying a small duffel bag, walking calmly to Unit 237, unlocking it and stepping inside. There was no footage of him living. The cameras at Safekeep recorded continuously, with no interruptions in the feed. The only exit from the storage facility was past the front gate, which logged every entry and exit electronically. According to the system, Thomas Whitley never left. As weeks passed, the investigation stalled. Officers dismantled the mirrors, examined the walls and floor of the unit, and found nothing unusual except for that persistent warm spot in the corner. They brought in ground-penetrating radar to check for hidden spaces beneath the concrete. They found none. Thomas's sister Elaine refused to believe he was gone. He must have found another way out, she insisted. Thomas was always clever that way. But as Detective Simmons gently explained, the facility was surrounded by a 12-foot fence topped with barbed wire. The security cameras covered every angle of the perimeter. There was simply nowhere for Thomas to go. 6 months after Thomas's disappearance, Dale Kershaw reported another strange occurrence. Despite the unit being emptied and cleaned, new tenants complained about Unit 237. They described hearing faint tapping sounds from inside the walls. One tenant claimed to have seen a man's reflection in the window, standing behind her, though she was alone in the unit. The tenant moved out the next day. The unit remained vacant after that. Dale admitted to Detective Simmons that he couldn't bring himself to rent it again. 1 year to the day after Thomas vanished, Detective Simmons returned to safekeep storage. Something about the case continued to haunt her. She had brought Thomas's journal with her, rereading his increasingly erratic entries about mirrors and doorways. Dale led her into Unit 237, now dusty and empty. She stood in the center of the space, trying to imagine what had happened there. As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of movement in the small window high on the back wall, a reflection that didn't match her own. For just a moment, she thought she saw Thomas Whitley looking back at her, his hand pressed against the glass as if trying to reach through. By the time she turned around, there was nothing there, just an empty storage unit and the lingering question that would never be answered: where did Thomas Whitley go? The case remains officially unsolved. Thomas Whitley was declared legally dead in 2022, though his body was never found. His house was sold, his possessions distributed according to his will. His students created an art memorial that hangs in the hallway of Millfield High School, a mosaic made of small mirror fragments arranged in the shape of his profile. Occasionally, someone will claim to have seen Thomas's reflection in one of those fragments, watching the students pass by in the hallway. The school administration dismisses these stories as urban legends, the kind that inevitably grow around mysterious disappearances. But Detective Laurel Simmons, who retired from the force in 2023, keeps a small mirror on her desk at home. Sometimes, late at night, she swears she catches glimpses of a storage unit in its reflection, a storage unit lined with mirrors, where a man sits patiently in a wooden chair, writing in a journal, waiting for someone to see him. And in Millfield, parents warn their children not to stare too long into mirrors, especially at night. You never know who might be looking back. Crime 4, it was a handwritten list tucked inside a wedding album, neatly penned names, most crossed out with check marks beside them, all except one. The name belonged to a man who had died years earlier, confirmed buried, but his name appeared again on a second list, underlined with the note, "He still owes us." The discovery came 3 weeks after Melanie Winstead's disappearance from Ashford, Connecticut. Her mother, Caroline, had been searching through family memorabilia, hoping to find any clue about where her 34-year-old daughter might have gone. The wedding album was Melanie's, from her marriage to Timothy Winstead 8 years earlier, a marriage that had ended in divorce just 14 months ago. Melanie had grown up in Ashford, a quiet town of 4,500 residents where generations of families knew each other's business. She was remembered as the girl with auburn hair who ran track in high school, who volunteered at the library on weekends, who always seemed a little shy but had a smile that lit up rooms when she chose to use it. After college in Boston, she had returned home, settling into a position as an administrator at the local community college. She'd met Timothy at a faculty dinner. He taught economics there. Their wedding had been modest but elegant. 112 guests at the Ashford Historical Society's garden, white roses, string quartet, a perfect June day. She planned everything meticulously, Caroline told Detective Sandra Morris. Every detail mattered to Melanie. That's why finding this list was so unsettling. It wasn't like her to keep something like this. The list was written on cream-colored stationery with the heading Final Follow-Ups in Melanie's distinctive handwriting. Most names were familiar, relatives, college friends, colleagues, all checked off except for Daniel Keating. The name meant nothing to Caroline. "I've never heard Melanie mention anyone by that name," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "And this notation, he still owes us. What could that possibly mean?" Detective Morris had been with the Connecticut State Police for 17 years. Ashford fell under her jurisdiction, and missing persons cases were rare enough that each one received her full attention. She was a methodical investigator, known for her patience and thoroughness. The day Melanie was reported missing, Morris had walked through the young woman's small ranch-style house with careful eyes. Everything had appeared normal: bed made, dishes washed, mail sorted on the kitchen counter. Her blue Honda Civic was parked in the garage. Her phone was missing, but her purse remained on the entryway table, wallet intact with credit cards and $43 in cash. Her passport was in the desk drawer. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. It was as if she had stepped out for a moment and intended to return, Morris noted in her initial report. The only unusual element was the cat's food and water bowls, filled to overflowing. Melanie was known to be fastidious about her pet's care. Timothy Winstead had been the first person interviewed. The divorce had been amicable, according to everyone who knew them. "We just wanted different things," he explained. "I was offered a position at Stanford. She didn't want to leave Connecticut. We tried long distance for a while, but..." He trailed off, eyes downcast. "I still care about her. I need you to find her." His alibi was solid. He had been in California, teaching classes, meeting with students. Video footage from campus security cameras confirmed his whereabouts. Morris ran the name Daniel Keating through the database. 3 Daniel Keatings appeared in Connecticut records. One was 87, residing in a nursing home. One was 19, a college student with no apparent connection to Melanie. And one had died 7 years ago at the age of 42. The cause of death, Morris asked the clerk who had pulled the records. "Car accident on Route 84, single vehicle, no passengers." Morris requested the full file. Daniel Keating had been an insurance adjuster from Hartford, married, 2 children, no criminal record, no obvious connection to Melanie Winstead or her husband. The accident report described a rainy night, a curve taken too fast, a tree that had stood its ground. Caroline provided more context as she continued looking through her daughter's belongings. In a desk drawer, she found a small leather-bound notebook. Inside were lists, grocery items, books to read, Christmas gifts, and on the last page, another reference to Daniel Keating, DK file, storage unit. The storage unit led Morris to a facility 10 miles outside of Ashford. Records showed Melanie had rented a small unit 3 years ago, payments automatically withdrawn from her checking account each month. The manager unlocked it. Inside were standard items, seasonal decorations, old furniture, boxes labeled college and high school, and one unlabeled cardboard file box. Inside the box, Morris found newspaper clippings about Daniel Keating's accident, insurance documents, photographs of a damaged guardrail, a map with markings that didn't correspond to the official accident report, and a voice recorder. The audio was poor quality, but the conversation was clear enough. "I can't be part of this anymore," a female voice, presumably Melanie's. "You already are part of it," a male voice responded. "We all are, but he had a family, children. He should have thought about that before. I never agreed to anything like this. It's done now. No one's connecting any dots." The recording ended abruptly. Morris brought Timothy Winstead back in for questioning. He seemed genuinely confused by the recording. "I don't know what that's about, honestly. When we were married, Melanie never mentioned anyone named Keating." He paused, then added, "There was a period, maybe 4 years ago, when she seemed preoccupied, anxious. I asked her about it, but she said it was work stress." Work colleagues described Melanie as professional, reserved. "She kept to herself," said the department secretary. "Always friendly, but private. No one recalled her mentioning Daniel Keating." Morris reviewed Melanie's phone records for the weeks before her disappearance. Multiple calls to a prepaid cell phone that couldn't be traced. The last call had been made the night before she vanished, lasting 22 minutes. 5 weeks into the investigation, Morris received a call from a detective in Hartford. They had arrested a man named Victor Langley for insurance fraud. During questioning, Langley had mentioned Melanie Winstead. "He says she has information about other cases," the Hartford detective explained. "Seems eager to talk if it means a reduced sentence." Langley was a former claims investigator who had worked at the same company as Daniel Keating. According to him, they had been part of a scheme to deny legitimate claims, particularly from lower-income clients who lacked resources to fight back. "Keating got cold feet," Langley said. "Started talking about whistleblowing, making things right. Then he had his accident." He made air quotes with his fingers. "And Melanie Winstead?" Morris asked. "She worked in the claims processing department before she moved to the college. Just part-time filing clerk, but she saw things, heard things, and she was smart, kept documentation." "Did she threaten to expose the scheme?" Langley's expression darkened, not directly, but she started asking questions after Keating died. The wrong people noticed. "Who are these wrong people?" Langley shook his head. "I've said enough. If I give you names, I'm dead too." Morris returned to Melanie's house with a forensic team. They combed through computer files, discovering encrypted emails between Melanie and someone using the name Watchman. The emails discussed gathering evidence about insurance fraud cases, including Daniel Keating's death. The last email from Watchman read, "Meeting confirmed. Bring everything you have. After this, we can finally put it all to rest." There was no response from Melanie. Caroline was able to fill in one more piece of the puzzle. Timothy and Melanie's wedding anniversary would have been next week, she said. Even after the divorce, Melanie would look through their wedding album on that day, said it reminded her of happier times. Morris examined the album again. In the group photos, she studied each face carefully. In one image of Timothy's side of the family, a man stood at the edge of the frame, partially turned away from the camera. When enlarged, his profile bore a striking resemblance to Daniel Keating's driver's license photo. Timothy was brought in for a third interview. When confronted with the photo, his composure finally cracked. "Daniel was my cousin," he admitted. "Second cousin, actually. We weren't close. I didn't even know he worked at the same company as Melanie until after he died. Yet he was at your wedding." "Family obligation. I barely spoke to him that day." "And you never thought to mention this connection when we found his name on Melanie's list?" Timothy's eyes darted around the room. I didn't make the connection. It's been years since I thought about him." Morris leaned forward. "Mr. Winstead, we have reason to believe your ex-wife was gathering evidence about insurance fraud at her former workplace. Evidence that suggests Daniel Keating's death wasn't an accident." Timothy's face paled. "That's impossible. Daniel drove off that road because he was texting. Everyone knows that." "How do you know he was texting? That wasn't in any public report." He fell silent. The investigation expanded to include the insurance company where both Daniel Keating and Melanie had worked. Financial records showed suspicious patterns, claims denied based on technicalities, internal memos warning about problematic cases that needed special handling. Several executives had received unusually large bonuses the year of Keating's death. 6 months after Melanie's disappearance, hikers found human remains in a wooded area 30 miles from Ashford. Dental records confirmed it was Melanie Winstead. The cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. Forensic evidence suggested she had been killed elsewhere and moved to the location where she was found. The evidence against Timothy Winstead was circumstantial but compelling. His financial records showed large cash withdrawals around the time of Daniel Keating's death. Cell phone data placed him in Connecticut during periods when he claimed to be in California, and a search of his Stanford office uncovered a thumb drive containing copies of the same files Melanie had stored in her unit. What Timothy hadn't known was that Melanie had sent duplicates of all her evidence to a journalist at the Hartford Courant. The day after her disappearance, a package arrived at the newspaper office with a note, "If anything happens to me, this is why." The resulting investigation led to charges against 3 insurance executives and a private investigator who had worked for the company. Timothy Winstead was charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice, but prosecutors couldn't conclusively tie him to either death. In Melanie's wedding album, behind the last page of photos, investigators found one more note in her handwriting. "Some debts can never be repaid, but the truth demands its due." The wedding guest list included a dead man. The dead man's cousin married a woman who knew too much, and ultimately they both paid prices they never expected when they said their vows on that perfect June day in Ashford. Caroline Winstead still visits her daughter's grave weekly, bringing fresh flowers and taking away the wilted ones. Sometimes she thinks she sees a figure watching from a distance, a man whose face she can't quite make out. But when she turns for a better look, there's never anyone there. Detective Morris keeps a copy of the wedding photo on her desk. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she finds herself studying Daniel Keating's partially obscured face, wondering what he would have said if he'd known what his death would set in motion, and how many others would follow him into silence before the truth finally emerged. The case officially remains open. Justice, like some wedding guests, arrives late, or sometimes not at all. Crime 5, the porcelain cracked as it hit the floor. Inside wasn't stuffing or fabric, but rusted nails, dozens of them, each one bent at the tip. One had something wrapped around it, a child's bracelet, engraved with a name the current homeowners had never heard before. Sarah and Michael Harmon had been renovating their century-old Victorian home in the small town of Millbrook, Maine, for 3 months. The house on Oakwood Drive had been vacant for nearly 7 years before they purchased it at a price that seemed too good to be true. During those initial viewings, their realtor had mentioned something about the previous owners leaving suddenly, but the Harmons were too enchanted by the detailed woodwork and original fixtures to press for details. It was Sarah who found the doll. While removing the faded floral wallpaper in what would become their nursery, she noticed a small rectangular outline on the wall. A gentle push revealed a hidden compartment, not uncommon in these old New England homes. Inside was a single porcelain doll, its painted face pristine despite the decades of dust surrounding it. "I think I found something," Sarah called to Michael, who was working downstairs. The doll wore a blue gingham dress that had yellowed with age. Its painted eyes were a deep brown, almost black, and seemed to follow Sarah as she lifted it from its resting place. Something about the weight felt wrong, too heavy for its size, too dense. When she accidentally dropped it, the head shattered against the hardwood floor, revealing its disturbing contents. The name on the tiny silver bracelet was Emma. Detective Lawrence Reed had been with the Millbrook Police Department for 23 years. Most of his cases involved petty theft, the occasional domestic dispute, or teenagers breaking curfew. When the call came in about found objects in the old Palmer house, as the locals still called it, he initially assigned it to a junior officer. But something about the mention of a child's bracelet made him reconsider. "I'll handle this one myself," he told the dispatcher, his tone betraying nothing of the cold unease settling in his stomach. Reed had been a rookie officer when the Palmer family lived in that house. Thomas and Claire Palmer with their 8-year-old daughter, Emma. He remembered Emma clearly, a quiet child with auburn hair always neatly braided who carried a porcelain doll wherever she went. The family had moved away in 2016, or so everyone thought. No farewell parties, no goodbyes to neighbors. One day they were simply gone, the house sitting empty until the bank finally foreclosed years later. "We need to take this," Reed explained to the Harmons as he carefully placed the broken doll pieces and nails into evidence bags. "And I'll need to ask you about anything else unusual you found in the house." The couple exchanged glances. "There was a box in the attic," Michael said slowly, "full of photographs. We thought they belonged to previous owners, so we set them aside." The photographs showed Emma at various ages, from toddlerhood to what appeared to be age 7 or 8. In nearly every image, she clutched the same porcelain doll, but what disturbed Reed most was the progression visible across the images. In the earliest photos, Emma smiled. By the final photos, her expression had grown vacant, her skin pale, her frame noticeably thinner. "Did you notice anything else unusual about the house?" Reed asked. "Structural changes that seemed out of place, areas that seemed recently repaired before you moved in?" Sarah frowned. "The floor in the basement. The concrete looks newer in one corner. We thought maybe there had been water damage that needed fixing." Reed nodded, keeping his face neutral. "I'd like permission to bring in some equipment tomorrow, just to check the structural integrity of the house, for your safety." That night Reed sat at his kitchen table reviewing old files. The Palmers had no history with local police, no reports of domestic disturbance. Thomas had worked remotely as an insurance adjuster. Claire had homeschooled Emma. They kept to themselves, but neighbors reported nothing suspicious, only that the family was private and a bit odd. One file contained a single page. A school nurse had reported concerns when Emma briefly attended second grade at Millbrook Elementary. The child had been withdrawn from public schooling shortly after. The nurse noted Emma's unusual fear of going home and unexplained bruising on her arms. The report had been filed but never followed up on. Ground-penetrating radar revealed what Reed had feared. Beneath the newer concrete in the basement corner lay something approximately the size of a child's body. The excavation took hours, performed with the delicate precision of archaeologists rather than construction workers. They found no body. Instead, they discovered a small wooden chest sealed with multiple padlocks. Inside was a collection of children's clothing, neatly folded, and dozens of identical porcelain dolls, each one with its head carefully removed and filled with nails. Beneath these was a handwritten journal belonging to Claire Palmer. The entry started normally enough, a mother documenting her daughter's growth. But around Emma's 6th birthday, the tone changed. Claire wrote of the other Emma, a presence she believed was trying to take over her daughter. The journal detailed Claire's increasingly desperate attempts to trap this entity inside the dolls through rituals she created, involving nails and personal items belonging to her daughter. The final entry, dated April 23, 2016, read simply, "It didn't work. We have to leave. We have to take Emma somewhere safer, somewhere nobody will find us." A nationwide search was launched for the Palmer family. Credit card records showed they had traveled west, with the last transaction occurring at a gas station in Nevada. After that, nothing. No school enrollments for Emma, no employment records for Thomas or Claire, no death certificates, no social security activity. 6 months into the investigation, Reed received a small package at the police station. Inside was a porcelain doll's hand and a note written in childish handwriting, "Please stop looking. I'm happy now." Forensic analysis of the handwriting was inconclusive. The package had been mailed from Seattle, but the trail ended there. Occasionally, Reed still receives reports from colleagues across the country. A school counselor in Oregon concerned about a quiet girl with auburn hair. A doctor in Colorado who treated a child with unusual circular scars on her arms. A librarian in Washington who noticed a young teenager checking out books on porcelain doll repair. But Emma Palmer, if she's still out there, if that's still her name, remains a ghost. Her parents' shadows. The Harmons still live in the house on Oakwood Drive. They've painted the walls bright colors and filled the rooms with light. Their daughter was born last spring and they named her Hope. Sarah sometimes stands in the nursery at night, watching her baby sleep, wondering about the girl who once lived there. And sometimes, when the house is quiet, she swears she can hear the faint sound of something hard rolling across the attic floor above them, like dozens of small nails shifting inside a hollow space. Detective Reed keeps the bracelet in his desk drawer. Some nights before heading home, he takes it out and reads the name engraved there. Emma. He wonders if she escaped whatever her mother feared or if she became it. He wonders if the real horror was ever in the child at all, or only in the minds of parents who couldn't separate reality from delusion. In Millbrook, locals have added the Palmer house to their collection of town legends, despite the Harmons' best efforts to make it their own. Children dare each other to stand on the sidewalk after dark, whispering about the girl who disappeared and the dolls with nails for hearts. The truth remains buried, not in concrete, but in silence, in the spaces between what we know and what we fear, in the stories we tell ourselves when we hear unexpected sounds in old houses, in the doubt that lingers when we can't distinguish between victims and monsters. and somewhere perhaps in the mind of a young woman who once carried a porcelain doll everywhere she went. Crime 6, it started with a strange texture on the leaves, hard, yellow-white at the tips. As it grew, tiny structures resembling molars emerged from the base of the soil. The roots were wrapped around something dense. When the pot was broken open, they found a jawbone, too small to be an adult's. Meredith Sawyer had always been known for her green thumb. The 43-year-old kindergarten teacher lived alone in a modest bungalow on Blackberry Lane in the quiet suburb of Pine Grove, Connecticut. Her home was filled with plants, ferns cascading from macrame hangers, succulents adorning every windowsill, and a spectacular peace lily that had thrived in her care for over a decade. The neighbors thought of her as gentle, reliable, perhaps a bit reserved. She had taught at Pine Grove Elementary for 15 years, beloved by her students for her patience and the small garden she maintained in the classroom where children could watch seeds transform into sprouts. April in Pine Grove was mild that year. The cherry trees had just begun to bloom when Meredith's sister, Caroline, came to visit from Boston. They had planned a weekend of gardening, cooking, and catching up, a tradition they'd maintained since their parents passed away 5 years earlier. Caroline arrived Friday evening to find Meredith's car in the driveway, lights on in the house, but no answer when she knocked. Using the spare key Meredith kept under a decorative stone turtle, Caroline let herself in. "Meredith," she called out, moving through the living room where a cup of tea sat cold on the coffee table beside an open book. The house was silent except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator. In the kitchen, a pot of water had boiled dry on the stove. Caroline turned it off, a flutter of concern rising in her chest. She found her sister in the sunroom at the back of the house, slumped on the floor beside her potting bench. Dirt was scattered across the tiles. A new terracotta pot lay broken beside her, and a philodendron, roots exposed, lay nearby. Meredith was unconscious but breathing, a trickle of dried blood at her temple where she had apparently hit her head on the corner of the bench as she fell. The ambulance took Meredith to Pine Grove Memorial Hospital, where doctors determined she had suffered a stroke. Caroline stayed by her sister's side for 3 weeks as Meredith slowly regained her speech and some movement, though the right side of her body remained partially paralyzed. When it became clear that Meredith wouldn't be returning home soon, Caroline took a leave of absence from her job to care for her sister's home and plants. It was while watering the plants that Caroline first noticed something unusual about the pothos Ivy Meredith had recently repotted. Unlike the lush, heart-shaped leaves on the other vines, several leaves on this plant had developed strange, hard growths at their tips, yellowish-white, with a texture unlike anything Caroline had ever seen on a plant. Curious, she touched one, finding it solid and almost tooth-like. Caroline mentioned it to Meredith during her next hospital visit, but her sister seemed confused, unable to recall repotting a pothos. "Maybe basement," Meredith managed to say, her words still slurred from the stroke. "New soil, bag in corner." The following day, Caroline ventured into Meredith's basement, a space she rarely entered. Using her phone's flashlight, she navigated past shelves of preserved vegetables and gardening supplies. In the far corner, she found an open bag of potting soil beside a plastic storage bin. The soil looked ordinary enough, but something about the dimly lit space made Caroline uneasy. She took photos of both the plant and the soil to show her sister. When Caroline returned to the hospital, she found Meredith agitated. A nurse explained that she'd been having nightmares, calling out in her sleep. Upon seeing the photo of the plant, Meredith became even more distressed, repeatedly trying to say something that sounded like garden and child. The doctor suggested Caroline not upset her sister with gardening matters for now, attributing the reaction to post-stroke confusion. Over the next few days, the strange growths on the pothos became more pronounced. 3 leaves now had unmistakable tooth-like structures, hard and enamel-like. Caroline, increasingly disturbed, called a friend who worked at the university's botanical department. Dr. Elliot Renner agreed to stop by the next day. The botanist's visit was brief and inconclusive. He examined the plant with fascination, taking samples of both the leaves and soil. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted. "These structures aren't plant matter, they appear to be actual calcium formations, similar to dental material. Was your sister conducting some kind of experiment?" Caroline shook her head. "She's a kindergarten teacher, not a scientist." As Dr. Renner was leaving, he paused by the back door, looking out at Meredith's garden. "Has that area always been concrete?" he asked, pointing to a relatively new-looking patio section that occupied about a quarter of the backyard. "I'm not sure," Caroline replied. "Meredith mentioned renovating the garden last spring, but I haven't visited since Christmas." That night, Caroline dreamed of teeth growing from the soil in Meredith's garden. She awoke at 3 a.m., unable to return to sleep. Making herself a cup of tea, she sat in the kitchen, staring absently at the pothos plant she'd moved to the windowsill. In the moonlight, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, tiny white objects emerging from the soil itself. Unable to resist her growing unease, Caroline gently began to loosen the soil around these new growths. What she uncovered made her recoil in horror. A small, partially formed jawbone with several teeth still attached was intertwined with the plant's roots. Caroline called the police immediately. Officers arrived within 20 minutes, clearly skeptical until they saw the jawbone themselves. Detective Marcus Holloway took charge of the scene, carefully extracting the bone fragment and calling for forensic assistance. "Ms. Sawyer, how long has your sister had this plant?" Detective Holloway asked, his voice professional but guarded. "I don't know exactly. The pothos itself is probably old, but she mentioned repotting some plants recently." Caroline hesitated. "There's something else, that concrete patio in the backyard. My sister never mentioned having it installed." By dawn, Pine Grove police had cordoned off Meredith's property. Forensic technicians began the painstaking process of examining the concrete patio, using ground-penetrating radar to look for anomalies beneath the surface. Meanwhile, the jawbone was rushed to the state lab for analysis. Results came back within days. The bone belonged to a child, approximately 7 years old, who had been dead for less than a year. DNA testing was underway, but preliminary findings suggested the child was likely of Caucasian and Hispanic descent. Detective Holloway began researching missing children reports from the surrounding area. One case quickly caught his attention. 8-year-old Miguel Sanchez had disappeared 10 months earlier while walking home from Pine Grove Elementary School, where Meredith Sawyer taught. Though Miguel wasn't in Meredith's class, she would have known him from school events and hallway interactions. When officers broke through the concrete patio in Meredith's backyard, they discovered the partial remains of a child buried approximately 3 feet below the surface. Dental records confirmed it was Miguel Sanchez. Caroline couldn't reconcile this horror with the sister she knew, gentle Meredith, who wept over dead birds in the garden, who had dedicated her life to nurturing children. Yet the evidence was mounting. Receipts for concrete materials purchased by Meredith last summer, soil from the garden matching samples found in the pothos pot, and most damning of all, Miguel's missing Spider-Man backpack discovered in Meredith's attic, carefully wrapped in plastic. At the hospital, Meredith remained unable to fully communicate, though her condition was improving. When Detective Holloway attempted to interview her, she became extremely agitated, repeating "wasn't me" and "basement man" before doctors insisted the questioning stop. Caroline began spending more time in her sister's basement, searching for any clue that might explain or exonerate Meredith. In a box of old photographs, she found pictures of Meredith with a man Caroline didn't recognize, a bearded man with intense eyes, his arm around Meredith's shoulders. On the back of one photo was written, "Edward and me, Garden Project, March." None of Meredith's neighbors recalled her dating anyone recently, but one elderly woman across the street remembered seeing a workman's truck parked overnight occasionally during the early spring. "I assumed he was doing renovations," she told Detective Holloway. "Kept to himself, didn't like it when I waved to him once." Police databases identified Edward Kleinman, a landscaper with prior convictions for assault and child endangerment, who had worked briefly at several properties in Pine Grove the previous year. His current whereabouts were unknown. He had stopped reporting to his parole officer around the same time Miguel disappeared. As Meredith gradually regained her speech, a disturbing story emerged. She had hired Edward for some garden work after seeing his flyer at a local nursery. He had been charming, knowledgeable about plants, and seemed to understand her passion for gardening. A friendship developed, then a relationship, something Meredith had kept private, knowing her sister would disapprove of her dating someone with a criminal record. According to Meredith's fragmented account, Edward had begun spending time in her basement when she was at work, claiming to be setting up a surprise garden project. One evening, she came home to find him extremely agitated, insisting they needed to renovate the garden immediately. When she questioned him, he became threatening. He said accident boy saw him taking things from school, Meredith explained haltingly to Detective Holloway. Said boy fell, hit head on shovel, showed me in garden, tears streamed down her face. Made me help, said would tell police I did it, had my fingerprints on shovel. The investigation continued for months. Edward Kleinman remained missing despite a multi-state manhunt. Soil samples from various plants in Meredith's home revealed microscopic bone fragments in several pots. Edward had apparently distributed the evidence throughout her garden, a macabre insurance policy ensuring her complicity. Meredith was charged as an accessory after the fact, though her health and cooperation led to a plea agreement with minimal prison time. The Sanchez family never forgave her silence, regardless of her fear or manipulation. They filed a civil suit against both Meredith and the school district for negligence. Caroline sold her Boston apartment and moved into a small rental near the rehabilitation facility where Meredith now lived. She visited daily, trying to reconcile the sister she had known with the broken woman who had harbored such a terrible secret. The pothos plant was kept as evidence, its strange tooth-like growths a testament to the body's determination to be found. Scientists theorized that minerals and calcium from Miguel's remains had been absorbed by the plant's root system, manifesting in these unusual formations, nature's way of revealing what someone had tried to hide. In Pine Grove, parents now walk their children to school regardless of distance. The elementary school planted a garden memorial for Miguel, filled with bright flowers and butterflies. And on quiet nights, mothers and fathers checked and rechecked that their children were safely asleep in their beds, windows locked against the darkness outside, where somewhere perhaps Edward Kleinman still walked free, his hands ready to bury new secrets beneath freshly turned soil. Crime 7, passed down for generations, the quilt had always felt strangely coarse. During restoration, the fabric tore, revealing the stitching had been done not with thread, but with long strands of black hair. Each corner of the quilt bore initials, and one set matched a girl who disappeared from the neighborhood 40 years earlier. In the small town of Millridge, Pennsylvania, the Edwards family was known for their heirlooms. Patricia Edwards, 67, had inherited most of her grandmother's possessions when she passed in 1984. Among these treasures was a handmade quilt, adorned with elaborate patterns of flowers and birds that Patricia had always kept folded at the foot of her bed. The quilt was something of a conversation piece whenever guests visited, its intricate needlework and unusual texture drawing curious hands to stroke its surface. "It's always been a bit scratchy," Patricia would explain with a small laugh. "My grandmother said it was made with love, but not much comfort." Patricia's granddaughter, Elise, a textile conservator at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, had offered for years to restore the aging quilt. The fabric had begun to yellow in places, and some of the stitching was coming loose. Patricia had always refused, claiming her grandmother had been insistent that the quilt never be altered. But in June of 2023, after a moth infestation damaged a corner of the beloved heirloom, Patricia finally relented. "I just want to stabilize it," Elise had promised. "I won't change anything about the design." Elise brought the quilt to her home workshop, a converted sunroom filled with specialized tools and archival materials. She laid the quilt flat on her work table and began a careful examination, documenting each section with photographs. The piece was roughly queen-sized, made of squares of cotton fabric in faded blues and creams. What had always struck Elise as unusual was the stitching itself, dark, almost black threads that connected each piece and created the decorative patterns. On the third day of her restoration work, while repairing a tier along one edge, Elise noticed something peculiar. The thread she was removing didn't break like cotton or silk thread should. It stretched slightly before snapping back. Curious, she brought a section under her magnifying lamp and froze. What she had always assumed was dark thread was actually hair, long, black human hair, carefully twisted to create makeshift thread. "At first I thought it must be horsehair," Elise later told investigators. "People used to use it in upholstery, but under magnification, it was unmistakably human." Disturbed but also intrigued by her discovery, Elise carefully examined the corners of the quilt. Each bore small, embroidered initials that she had always assumed were the signatures of the women who had worked on the piece. One corner read ML, another SB, the third ER, and the final corner, the one that had been damaged by moths, revealed the letters VC. The initials might have remained just a curious detail had Elise not mentioned her discovery at Sunday dinner with her parents. Her father, Richard Edwards, Patricia's son, grew quiet at the mention of VC. "Valerie Carter," he said softly. "She was a girl who went missing when I was 12, from our neighborhood in Millridge." Richard remembered the summer of 1979 vividly. Valerie had been 17, a quiet girl who lived 3 houses down from the Edwards family. She had long black hair that reached past her waist, which her mother never allowed her to cut. One July morning, Valerie left home to walk to her summer job at the local library and never arrived. Her disappearance consumed the small town for months, with search parties combing the surrounding woods and police interviewing everyone in the neighborhood. "They never found her," Richard said. "It was the first time I realized bad things could happen in our town." Unsettled by the coincidence, Elise contacted the Millridge Police Department the next day. Detective Sarah Mercer listened to Elise's account with professional skepticism. Cold cases from the 1970s weren't uncommon, but evidence appearing in family heirlooms was the stuff of sensationalist fiction. Nevertheless, she agreed to visit Elise's workshop to examine the quilt. "I've been doing this job for 20 years, Detective Mercer said as she peered through Elise's magnifying lamp at the stitching. "And this is definitely human hair." The detective took samples from different sections of the quilt for DNA testing and asked permission to interview Patricia about the history of the quilt. Patricia, shaken by the discovery, insisted she had no knowledge of the quilt's true nature. "My grandmother never told me where it came from," she explained, her hands trembling around her teacup as she spoke with the detective. "She just said it was precious and should stay in the family." The investigation into the quilt's origins revealed a complex and disturbing history. Patricia's grandmother, Eleanor Mills, had received the quilt as a gift from a friend named Martha Lawson, whose initials, ML, appeared in one corner. Martha had been part of a quilting circle in Millridge during the 1970s, along with Susan Barker, SB, and Eleanor herself, AR. Detective Mercer tracked down Susan Barker, now in her 80s and living in a retirement community in Lancaster. The elderly woman's reaction to questions about the quilt was unexpected, not shock or horror, but a quiet resignation. "I always wondered if someone would find out," Susan whispered. "It was Martha's idea. She said it would bind us together forever." According to Susan, Martha Lawson had harbored an intense jealousy toward Valerie Carter's mother, Helen. Martha's husband, Thomas, had been involved with Helen years before, and Martha never forgave either of them. When Valerie began to resemble her mother as she grew older, Martha's resentment transferred to the daughter. "Martha said the girl was flaunting herself," Susan recalled, her voice hollow. "That hair of hers, Martha was obsessed with it, said it was sinful for a girl to have hair like that." The story that emerged over the following weeks was one of quiet, calculated malice. On that July morning in 1979, Valerie had been intercepted on her way to the library by Martha, who offered her a ride. Instead of taking her to work, Martha drove Valerie to her home where Susan and Eleanor were waiting, ostensibly for a quilting session. What happened next remained somewhat unclear in Susan's fragmented confession. She claimed they had only intended to cut Valerie's hair as a way to teach her humility. The situation escalated, resulting in Valerie's death, whether accidental or intentional. Susan would not or could not articulate. "Martha said we needed to use every part," Susan murmured. "That's what she always said about fabric scraps. Use every part so nothing is wasted." The women had disposed of Valerie's body in an abandoned well on property that had since been developed into a shopping center. Martha, in a macabre ritual that the others reluctantly participated in, had insisted on using Valerie's hair to stitch the quilt they were working on. Each woman embroidered her initials, and Martha added Valerie's, VC, in the final corner. "It was a terrible secret to keep," Susan said. "Eleanor could never even look at that quilt. That's why she gave it to Patricia to get it out of her house." DNA testing confirmed that the hair in the quilt was consistent with being from a single donor, though without Valerie's relatives to compare it to, a definitive identification was impossible. However, the circumstantial evidence, combined with Susan's confession, was enough for the prosecutor's office to consider charges. The case never went to trial. Susan Barker passed away in her sleep 3 weeks after her confession. Martha Lawson had died of cancer in 1998 and Eleanor Mills in 1984. The only justice for Valerie Carter came in the form of a proper burial, as ground-penetrating radar located remains consistent with a teenage girl in the location Susan had described. For the Edwards family, the discovery brought a complex mix of emotions. Patricia struggled with the knowledge that her beloved grandmother had been involved in something so horrific. Elise arranged for the quilt to be properly documented as evidence and then cremated, unable to bear the thought of preserving something made with such cruelty. The town of Millridge held a memorial service for Valerie Carter in October 2023, 44 years after her disappearance. Her high school yearbook photo, showing a solemn girl with long black hair and cautious eyes, stood on an easel next to the podium. Detective Mercer, who attended the service, later reflected, "Cold cases like this never really end, even when we know what happened. There's always another question, another detail that keeps you up at night." I still wonder what went through Valerie's mind in those final moments, and whether she knew her hair would become her silent testimony, waiting all these years to be discovered. In Patricia Edwards' home, the foot of the bed now remains empty, the space once occupied by the quilt a constant reminder of how easily the darkness of the past can be folded away, hidden in plain sight for generations, until some accidental tear reveals the truth within the stitches. Crime 8. In the small suburban community of Clearwater Ridge, Minnesota, Robin Matheson lived a life of quiet routine. At 42, she had settled into the comfortable rhythm of middle age, working from home as a freelance editor, tending to her collection of houseplants, and calling her mother in Florida every Sunday evening. Those who knew Robin described her as private but kind, the sort of neighbor who would collect your mail when you were away but rarely join neighborhood gatherings. Robin had moved to Clearwater Ridge 5 years earlier, following her divorce from Marcus, her husband of 12 years. The split had been amicable by most accounts, though Robin rarely spoke of it. She had purchased a modest 2-bedroom home on Willow Lane, the kind with vinyl siding and an attached garage, unremarkable in every way except for its isolation. Her house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, backing up to a small wooded area that separated the neighborhood from the highway beyond. In late October 2023, Robin's sister Elaine flew in from Seattle for a visit, something she did twice a year like clockwork. But this time when she arrived at Robin's house, something felt immediately wrong. The porch light was on despite the afternoon sun. The front door was unlocked. Robin's car sat in the driveway. Her phone lay on the kitchen counter beside a half-empty cup of tea, but Robin was nowhere to be found. It was like she had just gotten up in the middle of something and walked away, Elaine would later tell Detective Morgan Harrell. The TV was on, her laptop was open. Her reading glasses were sitting on top of a manuscript. It was as if she just stepped out, but then never came back. The first 48 hours of the investigation revealed little. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. Robin's purse, wallet, and car keys remained in the house. Security cameras from neighboring homes showed no unusual vehicles on Willow Lane that day. Friends and coworkers reported nothing unusual in Robin's behavior or communications in the days leading up to her disappearance. It was as if she had simply evaporated from her living room. But on the third day, Detective Harrell noticed something peculiar about the television. It was an older model, a bulky flat screen from the early 2010s. When he turned it on, it displayed only one channel, not a regular network station, but what appeared to be security camera footage of a long, dimly lit hallway. I tried changing the channel, Harrell noted in his report. I cycled through inputs, ran channel scans, disconnected and reconnected the cable box, but it kept returning to the same footage, this grainy black and white video of what looked like a corridor in an institutional building of some kind. There was no audio, just this silent view of a hallway with flickering fluorescent lights. The cable company had no explanation. According to their records, Robin's service was functioning normally. A technician they sent confirmed the TV should be receiving all subscribed channels, yet it persistently displayed only the hallway footage. Elaine recognized the TV as a recent purchase. Robin mentioned buying it just a month ago, she told Harold. She found it at that second-hand electronics store by the highway, what's it called? Electric Avenue or something. Said she got it for a steal. Electric Avenue Resale was a cluttered storefront in a half-empty strip mall just off Interstate 35. The owner, a heavy-set man named Dale Pritchett, remembered selling the television to Robin. Sure, I remember her. Quiet lady, paid cash. That TV came from an estate sale out in Lakeville. Some old guy died and his kids just wanted to clear out the house. I test everything before I sell it. That TV worked fine. Regular channels, HDMI input, everything. When asked about the hallway footage, Dale seemed genuinely puzzled. That wasn't on there when I sold it to her. Must have been something with her cable set up. Yet the mystery of the television deepened when forensic technicians examined the device. They discovered the TV had been modified, subtle alterations to the circuitry that wouldn't be noticeable to the average user. Someone had installed a small additional board that could potentially override normal functioning. More disturbing still, the board contained a SIM card slot, suggesting the capability for remote transmission. Whoever modified this knew what they were doing, said Alina Vasquez, the department's technology specialist. It's sophisticated work, not something your average hobbyist could manage. As the investigation continued into its second week, Detective Harold maintained a habit of checking Robin's house daily. On his fifth visit, he noticed something had changed on the TV screen. The hallway looked the same, but now a chair sat against one wall, a simple metal folding chair that hadn't been there before. The next day, the chair had been moved to the center of the hallway. On the seventh day, a door at the far end of the hallway was ajar, when previously it had been closed. It became clear we weren't looking at a static recording, Harold explained. This was either a live feed or a series of different recordings being cycled through the TV. By the third week of the investigation, the case had gained national attention. Amateur sleuths online analyzed screenshots of the hallway footage, attempting to identify the location based on architectural details. Some claimed it resembled hallways in certain hospital basement levels. Others suggested it might be part of an old municipal building or school. Then came the most disturbing development. 23 days after Robin's disappearance, a figure appeared in the hallway footage. A person wearing dark clothing stood at the far end, their face obscured by shadow. They stood motionless for several minutes before slowly walking toward the camera. As they got closer, they stopped, looked directly into the lens, and raised a hand as if in greeting or warning. The figure's face remained unidentifiable, but they were wearing what appeared to be a maintenance uniform with a patch on the shoulder. Harold ordered the TV removed and sent to the FBI's technical division for further analysis. Within hours, Robin's case was elevated to a potential kidnapping, with federal resources now involved. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A retired nurse named Greta Hoffman saw the hallway footage on a news report and immediately called the tip line. "I know that hallway," she said with certainty. "That's the old service corridor in the basement of Clearwater Memorial Hospital. I worked there for 30 years. They closed that section in 2008 when they built the new wing." The abandoned section of Clearwater Memorial had officially been sealed off years ago, accessible only to maintenance personnel. But when police accessed the area, they found evidence of recent activity, fresh footprints in the dust, a folding chair positioned just as it had appeared on the TV, and most tellingly, a small camera mounted discreetly on the ceiling, aimed down the corridor. Someone had been using this space, Harold noted. The question was, how did it connect to Robin? The answer lay in Robin's past, carefully omitted from her quiet life in Clearwater Ridge. Before becoming a freelance editor, Robin Matheson had been Robin Crawford, an investigative journalist for the Minneapolis Tribune. Her final major story before leaving journalism had been an expose on medical fraud at several regional hospitals, including allegations against Dr. James Whitfield, once the chief of surgery at Clearwater Memorial. Dr. Whitfield had lost his license and served 2 years in federal prison as a result of Robin's reporting. He had been released just 6 months before her disappearance. Police located Whitfield living in a small apartment in St. Paul. His initial interviews revealed a man still bitter about his downfall, but seemingly resigned to his new life working at a medical supply company. He denied any knowledge of Robin's whereabouts or the television anomaly. "I paid my debt," he told investigators. "Why would I risk everything now? Besides, I'm not some technological wizard who could hack a TV." But Whitfield's alibi for the day of Robin's disappearance was weak. He claimed to have been home alone, reading. More damning was the discovery that his younger brother Kyle had worked as an electronics engineer before being laid off the previous year. Kyle's apartment yielded tools and components similar to those used to modify Robin's television. The case against the Whitfield brothers built slowly but steadily. Cell tower data placed Kyle's phone near Robin's neighborhood multiple times in the weeks before her disappearance. Financial records showed James had purchased audiovisual equipment, including surveillance cameras, through a specialty website. And most conclusively, forensic analysis of the modified circuit board in Robin's TV found partial fingerprints matching Kyle's. Yet despite mounting evidence, one crucial element remained missing: Robin herself. The basement corridor of Clearwater Memorial revealed no additional clues. Expanded searches of the entire abandoned wing found nothing to indicate Robin had ever been there. The camera discovered in the hallway had been streaming to a private server, but the connection had been expertly anonymized, leaving investigators at another dead end. As months passed, the Whitfield brothers remained the primary suspects, but without Robin's body or concrete evidence of harm, prosecutors hesitated to file charges beyond illegal surveillance and trespassing. For Detective Harold, the case became a personal obsession. He kept Robin's file open on his desk, returning to it between other assignments. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit in Robin's living room, now preserved as a potential crime scene, and stare at the blank space where the television had been, wondering what else he had missed. On the 1-year anniversary of Robin's disappearance, a package arrived at the Clearwater Ridge Police Department addressed to Harold. Inside was a USB drive containing a single video file. The footage showed the now familiar hallway, but this time a woman walked slowly toward the camera. It was Robin Matheson, visibly thinner but unmistakably alive, looking directly into the lens. She spoke just 4 words before the video cut to black. Some stories never end. The investigation continues. Crime 9, not inside, outside. Deep gouges ran along the crib's wooden frame as if something had tried to claw its way in. The baby was unharmed, but beneath the mattress, someone had carved 4 words into the wood: "You locked me out." Sarah and Michael Brennan had moved to the small town of Lakewood, Oregon, 3 months prior. The couple had been looking for a fresh start after Michael's promotion allowed them to leave behind the cramped apartment they'd been renting in Seattle. The Victorian house they'd purchased sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees, the kind of neighborhood where people still brought casseroles to welcome new residents. Sarah was thrilled to finally have a proper nursery for their 6-month-old daughter, Emma. The room had been painted a soft yellow, with white clouds drifting across the ceiling. The crib, a hand-me-down from Michael's sister, had been sanded and repainted white, then positioned beneath the window that overlooked their fenced backyard. October had arrived with a persistent drizzle that seemed to blur the line between day and night. Sarah found herself spending more time indoors, watching Emma sleep, or sitting in the rocking chair by the window while the baby cooed and kicked her legs in delight. Michael worked long hours at his new position, often arriving home after Emma had been put to bed. On the evening of October 14th, Sarah put Emma down for the night, turned on the baby monitor, and went downstairs to make herself a cup of tea. The house settled around her, creaking and shifting as old houses do. She'd grown accustomed to the sounds, the pipes that knocked when the heat came on, the way the back door would catch when the humidity was high. At 9:17 p.m., Sarah heard something through the baby monitor. Not Emma's typical fussing, but a scratching sound, persistent and deliberate. She froze, cup halfway to her lips, listening. The scratching continued, followed by what sounded like a soft thud. Sarah rushed upstairs, moving quietly out of habit. The door to the nursery was closed, though she was certain she'd left it open. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned the knob. The room was dark except for the glow of the moon-shaped nightlight. Emma slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. Sarah approached the crib, relief washing over her. But as she reached down to adjust Emma's blanket, her fingers brushed against something on the wooden rail. She leaned closer, squinting in the dim light. Long, thin scratches marred the white paint on the outside of the crib, facing away from where Emma slept. Sarah's heart pounded as she lifted Emma from the crib and carried her to the master bedroom. She called Michael, who promised to come home immediately. While waiting, Sarah examined the crib more closely. The scratches were fresh, 4 distinct lines on the outer frame. When she lifted the mattress to check if anything had been placed inside, she discovered the words carved into the wood beneath, "You locked me out." The police arrived 20 minutes later. Officer Daniels took photographs of the scratches and the carved message. He checked every window and door in the house, finding no signs of forced entry. The baby monitor showed nothing unusual. The officer suggested it might be a prank, possibly from kids in the neighborhood, though he couldn't explain how anyone had entered the house without leaving traces. Michael returned home, visibly shaken. The couple agreed to sleep with Emma in their room that night. Neither of them slept well. The next morning, Sarah called a locksmith who replaced every lock in the house. Michael installed a security system with cameras covering all entrances. 3 days passed without incident. Sarah began to relax, wondering if perhaps she'd overreacted. Maybe the scratches had been there all along and she'd simply never noticed them. But the carved message, that couldn't be explained away so easily. On the 4th night, with Emma sleeping soundly in her parents' room, Sarah woke at 2:34 a.m. to the sound of the security system chiming. She nudged Michael awake and they checked the app on his phone. The camera in the nursery showed movement. The mobile above Emma's empty crib was spinning slowly. Michael grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and headed toward the nursery, with Sarah close behind, clutching her phone with 911 already dialed. The door was closed again. Michael pushed it open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. The nursery was empty, but the window was open, the curtains billowing gently in the night breeze. The mobile continued to spin, though there was barely any air movement in the room. Michael checked under the crib, behind the rocking chair, inside the closet, finding nothing. Officer Daniels returned with another officer named Martinez. They searched the entire house and yard, finding only a single muddy footprint beneath the nursery window outside. They collected a sample and promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood. The next day, Sarah visited neighbors, asking if anyone had seen anything unusual. Most people were sympathetic but unhelpful. Then she met Alina Winters, an elderly woman who lived 3 houses down. Alina had lived in Lakewood for over 50 years and knew everyone's business. "That house has history," Alina said, inviting Sarah in for tea. "Not bad history, mind you, but sad. The previous owners, the Clarenchers, they lost a child there." Alina explained that 15 years ago, the Clarenchers' 4-year-old son had wandered outside during a thunderstorm. The parents had thought he was asleep in his room, the very room that was now Emma's nursery. When they discovered he was missing, they searched frantically, eventually finding him in the creek behind the property. Resuscitation attempts failed. "After that, Mrs. Clarencher was never the same," Alina continued. "She swore she could hear her son trying to get back inside the house, said she'd hear scratching at the windows at night. Mr. Clarencher finally convinced her to move away." Sarah felt a chill run through her. Did they ever see anything besides hearing the scratching? Alina shook her head. "Not that I know of, but grief does strange things to people." That evening, Sarah shared what she'd learned with Michael. He was skeptical, suggesting that Alina might be confusing their house with another, or that the story had grown more dramatic over time. But he agreed to have someone check the property records just to be sure. The records confirmed Alina's story. The Clarenchers had indeed lived in the house from 2004 to 2009. Their son, Tyler, had drowned in 2008 at age 4. The house had changed hands twice since then, with neither subsequent owner staying longer than 3 years. Michael contacted the previous owners, a couple named Donovan who had lived in the house for just 11 months. They were reluctant to talk at first, but eventually admitted they'd left because of unexplained occurrences that had made them uncomfortable. They wouldn't elaborate, saying only that they didn't want to influence the Brennans' experience of the house. That night the Brennans set up a camera in Emma's nursery, though they continued to have her sleep in their room. Nothing unusual happened until 3:17 a.m. when the camera detected movement. The footage showed the rocking chair moving slightly, as if someone had just stood up from it. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably, visible in the way the curtains suddenly stopped moving, as if the air had become still and heavy. The next day, Sarah called a child psychologist, Dr. Amelia Harper, describing what had happened without mentioning the history of the house. Dr. Harper suggested that perhaps Sarah was experiencing heightened anxiety due to the transition of moving to a new home with an infant. She recommended sleep aids and offered to refer Sarah to a therapist. Michael was increasingly concerned about Sarah's state of mind. He suggested they spend a weekend away, staying with his parents in Portland. Sarah agreed, hoping the distance might help clear her head. The weekend passed without incident. Emma slept through both nights, and Sarah felt more rested than she had in weeks. On Sunday evening, they returned home, cautiously optimistic. That night they placed Emma in their room again. At 2:15 a.m., the baby monitor, which they'd left in the nursery out of habit, emitted a sound that jolted both parents awake. It wasn't a cry or a scratch, but a voice, faint, childlike, and unmistakably clear. Mommy. Sarah and Michael exchanged terrified glances. The voice came again. Let me in, Mommy. I'm cold. Michael grabbed the baseball bat and headed for the nursery, with Sarah behind him holding Emma. The nursery door was closed yet again. When Michael pushed it open, they found the room exactly as they'd left it, empty, undisturbed. The window was closed and locked from the inside. The next morning, Sarah packed a bag while Michael called a realtor. They would stay with his parents until they could find a new place. As Sarah gathered Emma's things from the nursery, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. On the inside of the crib, carved into the wood in the same handwriting as the message beneath the mattress, were 5 words, I just wanted to see. The police investigation continued for weeks. The footprint outside the window belonged to a size 6 child's shoe, though no child matching that description lived in the neighborhood. The voice on the baby monitor was analyzed but yielded inconclusive results. No fingerprints were found, other than those belonging to the Brennans and the officers who had been in the house. The Brennans never returned to the house in Lakewood. They sold it at a loss to a retired couple with no children. 6 months later, Sarah gave birth to their second child, a boy. They named him Tyler, though neither of them could explain exactly why the name felt right. Sometimes, late at night, Sarah thinks she hears scratching. She checks the crib, the windows, the doors, finding nothing. But she always leaves the hall light on, just in case someone needs to find their way home. The investigators officially closed the case in March of the following year. The file remains in the Lakewood Police Department archives, marked unsolved. Officer Daniels drives by the house occasionally, watching for signs of disturbance. The new owners have reported no unusual experiences. But beneath the freshly painted nursery, beneath new carpet and remodeled walls, 4 words remain carved into the wooden floor. You locked me out. Story 10. The real estate agent's listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints, carefully examined, revealed no trace of it. Yet when the family decided to peel back the old carpet, they stumbled upon a hidden door, its handle weighed down by rust and neglect. It took the combined effort of 3 curious souls to wrench it open, revealing a staircase leading into the unknown depths below. As they descended, a musty, stagnant air enveloped them, carrying with it the earthy aroma of damp soil. Anticipating a space for storage, they were taken aback to find a solitary chair positioned beneath a swaying light bulb, and on the wall behind the chair, a series of photographs depicting them, images captured surreptitiously from within the confines of their very own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban dwelling during a harsh winter, when the early darkness cast long shadows over the neighborhood's barren trees. The house, with its weathered facade and creaking floors, exuded a sense of character and history, a charm that had drawn them in. However, they could never have fathomed the unsettling history woven into the very fabric of their new abode, nor the chilling intersection it would have with their present lives. Detective Sarah Connors, accompanied by her partner, arrived at the scene, where the crime unit had already cordoned off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had relayed the disturbing discovery concealed beneath their living room floor. We must document every detail before anyone else ventures down there, Connors directed, slipping on latex gloves with practiced precision. The camera flashes punctuated the darkness as the forensic team meticulously captured the eerie scene. The wooden steps groaned underfoot as they descended into the petite basement, its concrete walls painted a somber gray. A lone chair, secured to the floor, occupied the center of the room. Above it, the stark bulb cast elongated shadows that danced in the stillness, a silent witness to the mysteries hidden below. However, it was the line of photographs that seized their attention, 37 snapshots meticulously arranged in a timeline. "These date back nearly 4 weeks," remarked Connor's partner, scrutinizing the timestamps on the back of each print. "Look at this one, Mrs. Mercer dozing on the couch, Mr. Mercer seated at the kitchen table, the children in their respective rooms." The investigation unraveled a baffling absence of forced entry, no shattered windows, no tampered locks. The security system had remained dormant, untriggered. Nothing tangible had been pilfered, only their privacy violated, shattering the illusion of security the family had harbored. Forensic analysis unearthed multiple fingerprints, predominantly belonging to the property's previous inhabitants. A disconcerting pattern emerged as they delved into the house's tumultuous history, with a trail of short-lived owners preceding the Mercers. Each family had resided for a meager span before hastily selling the property at diminishing prices. None had made mention of a hidden basement. "We must interview every past owner," Connors ordered, her notepad brimming with annotations. The case took a sinister turn as they retraced the property's lineage. Discrepancies surfaced in the record's tampered blueprints, withdrawn permits, redacted inspection reports. A pivotal breakthrough transpired during the interrogation of the contractor responsible for the house's renovations 7 years earlier. His countenance drained of color upon glimpsing the photographs of the basement. "That room is non-existent," he vehemently asserted, his hands trembling in disbelief. "I gutted that place to its core. There was no basement, no door, merely soil and concrete beneath the living room." Extraction of data from a concealed memory card nestled within the light fixture unveiled a trove of additional images. These snapshots did not solely feature the Mercers, but encompassed past families as well, children slumbering, parents embroiled in disputes, intimate moments and mundane routines, all captured by an elusive voyeur. The investigation plunged into murkier depths upon the recovery of audio files ensconced in a weatherproof box secreted in the basement's recesses. The recordings documented conversations held in the master bedroom, kitchen, and living room. The sophisticated sound quality implied the presence of covert microphones positioned throughout the house, yet none were discovered during the initial sweep. "We must dismantle every wall," Connors decreed, a taut urgency lacing her tone. "Inspect the air vents, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has surveilled these families for years, hidden in plain sight." Concealed behind the photograph-laden wall, investigators stumbled upon a narrow passageway leading to a minuscule monitoring hub. A desk, a chair, a laptop linked to an array of wireless cameras, and a journal brimming with meticulous observations on each family that had dwelled in the house. Their routines, schedules, conflicts, vulnerabilities, all meticulously chronicled by the property's original architect, a man identified as Edward Kelvin. Curiously, records indicated his demise during the house's construction, a fact that grew increasingly dubious as the inquiry progressed. The journal's final entries teetered on the brink of insanity, with recurring phrases such as "they never look beneath" and "they never perceive me." The conclusive page bore a chilling inscription: "The subsequent family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint scrutiny validated the investigators' burgeoning suspicions. Edward Kelvin had never departed from the abode he had erected. Rather, he had receded into its concealed recesses, crafting a labyrinth of observation points from which he could clandestinely monitor the families who believed themselves solitary occupants. The pursuit unfolded over 3 intense days, culminating in Kelvin's discovery curled within a crawlspace amid the second-floor bedrooms. His emaciated form, adapted to navigating the narrow passages he had fashioned within the walls, blinked warily against the beam of flashlights unaccustomed to unfiltered light. During interrogation, Kelvin expounded on the families as if they were mere players in his private theater, watched with the detached scrutiny of a dispassionate scientist. He professed to have refrained from any direct interaction, no theft, no intrusion, merely observation, documentation. "They welcomed me in," he calmly articulated to the investigators. "They inked the deeds, they became mine." A psychological assessment attributed Kelvin's actions to severe delusions, wherein he perceived himself as the custodian of the house rather than an interloper. The families, in his distorted reality, were transient tenants in what he deemed his eternal domicile. The Mercer family never returned to the property, joining the ranks of those who had forsaken their possessions, salvaging only essentials in their flight. The house stood in desolate abandonment as the legal proceedings unfolded. The trial laid bare the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, hidden chambers accessible solely through crawlspaces, covert observation points ingrained within the edifice, meticulously orchestrated before the foundation was laid. The house, unbeknownst to its occupants, had been architected as an apparatus for observation, with the residents unwitting participants in Kelvin's obsessive documentation. Upon the jury's verdict, Kelvin remained impassive, already ensconced within the labyrinth of his mind, where he could still traverse the unseen passages of the house now relegated to memory. The property met its demise, razed to the ground, its subterranean secrets unearthed and erased. Yet for those who had inhabited its walls, the violation endured. They were haunted not by what had been taken from them, but by the covert presence they had unknowingly harbored, observing, eavesdropping, recording their private moments within walls presumed to be sanctuaries. In moments of silence, they found themselves casting wary glances toward air vents, light fixtures, and the junctures where walls melded into ceilings, pondering if they were truly alone now, pondering if they ever had been. Story 11. In the quiet depths of the night, a pocket dial echoed through the operator's line, a mere whisper of static and muffled sounds. Initially dismissed as a simple error, the call took a chilling turn when a voice broke through the haze. A woman's frantic whisper pierced the silence. "He's here." Abruptly, the line fell into an eerie stillness, leaving behind a sense of foreboding in its wake. The operator traced the mysterious call to an abandoned house, a solemn structure left to decay for years, holding its secrets close. No signs of intrusion marred its forgotten facade, no disturbances disrupted the dust-laden air. Yet in the dimly lit kitchen, a phone sat upon the counter, its screen casting an otherworldly glow. The call had been placed mere moments ago, a haunting enigma in the stillness of the night. Detective Morgan Reed found herself captivated by the enigmatic whisper, its essence lingering in the air, desperate, terrified, and inexplicable. The forsaken property had once belonged to the Sullivan family, who had fled after a devastating fire consumed a part of their home. Since then, it stood abandoned, visited only by a caretaker who swore no soul had crossed its threshold in years. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The revelation that the call originated from Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the former residents, sent a shiver down their spines. Catherine had perished in a tragic car accident 3 years prior, her presence now a spectral whisper in the empty house. As the investigation unfolded, the inexplicable nature of the case deepened. A phone, once belonging to a departed soul, now made calls from the void of abandonment, defying all logic and reason. The phone rested on the counter, a lone beacon in the desolate kitchen, its presence a riddle in the silence. Forensic examinations yielded no tangible evidence, no fingerprints save for elusive smudges that defied identification. No traces of intrusion marked the pristine solitude of a house, its doors locked, its windows sealed against the outside world. The mystery only deepened as the investigation delved into the heart of the whisper that echoed through the stillness. The recording, a mere 11 seconds of static, breath, and desperate words, became the focal point of their inquiry. Voice analysis confirmed the haunting whisper as Catherine Sullivan's own, her spectral presence lingering in the ethereal realm. The timestamp revealed a chilling truth. The call coincided with Catherine's tragic demise, a ghostly echo from beyond the veil. Morgan and Walsh delved into Catherine's past, unraveling the threads of her life in search of answers. Her father, now remarried, stood bewildered by the unearthly call. Her mother, a solitary figure in a small apartment, crumbled at the sound of her daughter's spectral plea. The whispers of the past emerged, painting a portrait of fear and desperation in the face of the unknown. Amidst the shadows of the investigation, a breakthrough emerged: a journal unearthed from Catherine's belongings, a chronicle of her tumultuous relationship with Mark. The pages spoke of love turned to control, of isolation and mounting dread. The final entry, a chilling premonition of impending doom, hinted at a sinister truth lurking in the depths of the past. Confronted once more, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of suspicion. The journal's damning words echoed in the room, accusing him of unspeakable deeds. Yet in his denial, a sinister truth lay buried, a truth that would unravel the carefully constructed facade of innocence. As the investigation took a dark turn, a hidden phone emerged from the depths of the earth, its silent testimony condemning the one who sought to silence its owner. Deleted texts unveiled a harrowing tale of betrayal and tragedy, a story of a life cut short by malevolent hands. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, a sinister plot woven by a man consumed by darkness. Mark's twisted game of deception and manipulation had ensnared all who crossed his path, leaving a trail of shattered lives in his wake. With his arrest, the truth emerged from the shadows, bringing justice to a soul silenced by treachery. In the stillness of the courtroom, as the verdict was rendered, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest, a bittersweet victory for a life taken too soon. The phone from the abandoned house now rested in the evidence locker, its spectral whispers fading into the annals of memory. Though the case was closed, the echoes of Catherine's voice lingered in the air, a reminder that even in death her spirit endured. The phone may never ring again, its battery long removed, but the legacy of Catherine's courage and resilience lived on, a testament to the enduring power of a victim's voice, speaking out from beyond the grave. Story 12. Calf had been his sanctuary for years, same spot, same brew, same tranquility. The barista recognized his face, but his identity remained a mystery to all. Then one day he vanished. When authorities searched his usual haunt, they stumbled upon a forgotten wallet. Inside, a driver's license bore a face without a name, without an address, just emptiness where his essence should have resided. The security footage revealed the impossible. He had entered, he had seated himself, but he had never departed. Detective Sarah Mercer studied the footage intently, pressing her fingers against the chill of the metallic table. The enigmatic figure, now dubbed John Doe in official records, appeared unassuming on screen, Average stature, nondescript features, clad in a navy coat with a weathered leather bag slung over his shoulder. His vanishing act defied logic, given his unremarkable presence. "Replay it," Mercer directed the tech specialist. The footage unfolded, showing John entering the cafe during the morning bustle. He ordered his usual black coffee, no sweetener, and settled at the shadowed corner table obscured by a leafy plant. Quietly, he delved into his bag, extracted a notebook, and began to write. Occasionally, he would sip his coffee and gaze out the window. Then came the pivotal moment. He placed his wallet on the table, rose, and headed towards the restroom corridor. Yet he never returned to his seat. He never emerged through any exit. He simply vanished into thin air. "Examine the restroom footage," Mercer urged. "But here's the strange part," the specialist responded. "There's no record of him entering any restroom. We've scrutinized every camera angle. It's as if he evaporated." Back at the precinct, Mercer spread the contents of the wallet across her desk. The photo on the driver's license matched the enigmatic man, but all personal details were absent, replaced by blank voids. The credit cards bore no names, just strings of numbers leading to non-existent accounts. Neatly stacked cash in assorted bills, a receipt from the cafe dated 3 days prior, and a lone business card blank on both sides save for a faded phone number in gray ink. When Mercer dialed the number, the line connected, yet silence prevailed. Only the faint sound of rustling paper reached her ears, akin to pages being turned. After 30 seconds, the call abruptly ended. The barista who had served John for years could offer little insight. He seldom spoke, always courteous, generous with tips. Perhaps he had an accent, but his voice was soft, making it hard to discern. "Did he engage with anyone here, hold conversations?" Mercer inquired. "Never. Always solitary, always engrossed in that notebook." The notebook lay on the table beside the abandoned wallet, its pages filled with what seemed to be encoded text or ciphers. Cryptographers labored over deciphering its contents. Some sheets featured sketches, blueprints of structures that bore no resemblance to any known edifices in the vicinity. Mercer dispatched officers to canvass the neighborhood with John Doe's photos, yet no recognition surfaced. No missing persons reports aligned with his description. His fingerprints yielded no matches in any database. It was as though he existed solely within the confines of that cafe. Amidst her inquiry, Mercer detected an anomaly in the security footage. Each morning John entered the cafe, the camera's time-stamp flickered momentarily. The specialist dismissed it as a glitch, but Mercer harbored doubts. Returning to the cafe, she settled at his table. From this viewpoint, she could surveil both the entrance and the corridor leading to the restrooms. Suspended between them hung an antiquated mirror, intricately adorned with symbols akin to those in John's notebook. Upon the cafe owner's arrival, Mercer probed about the mirror. "That old thing, been here longer than me, came with the building. Bulky as sin, requires two to shift it. Has it ever been relocated, cleaned, or redecorated? Not in my tenure. Why do you ask?" Mercer approached the mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. The glass bore a subtle distortion, lending her image an illusion of depth. Expecting cool glass, she touched its surface and encountered an unexpected warmth. Forensic experts arrived to scrutinize the mirror. Upon removal from the wall, a small hollow space emerged behind it. Nestled within were an array of identical wallets, each containing a driver's license with the same photo but lacking identifying information. Beside them rested a leather-bound journal brimming with entries spanning decades, inscribed in the same hand as the notebook left behind. The final entry read, "The experiment must cease. They draw near. The aperture is closing." Imprints of John Doe's fingerprints peppered the concealed compartment. Carbon dating of the earliest wallet suggested it was roughly 50 years old, yet the countenance in the photo remained unaltered. The journal entries alluded to experiments in temporal displacement and identity transference, hinting at crossing back and window points. One passage seized Mercer's attention. The calf serves as a nexus, a juncture where realities converge. The mirror acts as the portal. When alignment aligns, transit becomes feasible. As the inquiry deepened, peculiar occurrences unfurled around the calf. Patrons reported witnessing their reflections moving autonomously in the window panes. Many claimed to have glimpsed John Doe seated at his customary table, though surveillance cameras mirrored emptiness. A breakthrough surfaced when an elderly woman reached out to the police station regarding the investigation. Introducing herself as Margaret Keller, a former physicist involved in classified governmental ventures, she recognized John Doe from the news coverage. His name was Daniel Weston, she disclosed, a brilliant theoretical physicist who vanished while engrossed in an experimental endeavor revolving around quantum mirror surfaces potentially facilitating interdimensional transit. Keller furnished documentation illustrating Weston's presumed demise following a laboratory mishap. The date of his disappearance aligned with the earliest entry in the journal, Unearthed Behind the Mirror. He posited that our reality is but one among many coexisting, Keller elaborated. He postulated that certain locales function as weak points between these realities' locales where one might traverse. Armed with this revelation, Mercer revisited the calf. Research unveiled that the structure stood on grounds that once housed the very research facility where Weston twalled. The calf had been erected directly atop the laboratory where he vanished. The climax of the case transpired when Mercer, scrutinizing the security footage solo late one night, discerned an oversight neglected in prior viewings. Reflected in the mirror in the background, John Doe Daniel Weston observed himself seated at the table. Two iterations of the same individual coexisting. Rushing to the calf to reinspect the mirror, Mercer discovered it shattered on the floor. Amidst the shards, a final note inscribed in the familiar script lay, "The experiment concludes. The gateway is sealed. Do not endeavor to pursue." The enigma of the phantom man remains officially unresolved. The calf shuttered shortly after the investigation, ultimately razed. Daniel Weston's remains were never located. His notebooks and journals vanished from the evidence repository under mysterious circumstances. Mercer resigned from the force not long after. Locals occasionally glimpse her seated on her veranda, fervently writing in a notebook akin to Weston's. Adorning her wall hangs a fragment of an antique mirror, its surface sporadically rippling when unobserved. Story 13. Renovations always reveal the unexpected. Among the relics of the past, old newspapers, shattered trinkets, faded photographs, there lies the potential for mystery to unfold. In a quaint Victorian-era home, Sarah and Michael embarked on a renovation project filled with promise and nostalgia. Little did they know that beneath the worn floorboards lay a secret waiting to be unearthed. As the couple gingerly lifted the wooden planks, a folded letter emerged, its edges tinged with age, its ink a ghostly whisper of words long written. "Don't trust the one who knocked," the message cautioned, sending a shiver through Sarah and Michael's souls. Before they could process the chilling words, the echoes of 3 sharp raps pierced the silence of the empty house, setting their hearts ablaze with fear. Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the enigmatic, arrived at the scene with her partner. The floorboards lay exposed, revealing a hidden void beneath, a void that seemed to hold the weight of untold secrets. With hands weathered by years of unraveling mysteries, Reed carefully retrieved the ominous note, knowing that the couple's inadvertent touch had tainted it with their presence. Sarah and Michael's faces bore the traces of genuine fear as they recounted the unsettling sound that had reverberated through the walls. Background checks painted a picture of normalcy for the couple newlyweds, solid credit, steady employment. But the house itself whispered of a darker past, one that lingered in the shadows of its ornate moldings and storied past. The history of the house unraveled like a thread as Reed delved deeper into the lives of its former inhabitants. The Hargrove family, the previous owners, had left behind a legacy fraught with unanswered questions. Franklin Hargrove, a respected teacher turned recluse, and his wife Margaret, a woman haunted by the specter of a mysterious visitor who came knocking with ominous regularity. Forensic analysis of the letter hinted at a time 2 decades past, a time when fear and urgency had gripped the hand that penned the warning. Margaret's sister, a fragile whisper from the past, revealed fragments of a harrowing tale involving debts, threats, and a man known only as the Collector. Franklin's descent into paranoia, fueled by gambling debts and the looming figure of the Collector, painted a portrait of desperation and despair. The truth lay buried beneath the floorboards, hidden in the darkness of the crawl space. Cadaver dogs led the way to a grim discovery: a male skeleton, its fractured skull a testament to violence long forgotten. Dental records identified the remains as Victor Mercer, a lone shark and enforcer who had vanished without a trace 2 decades prior, his fate sealed within the confines of the house. Margaret's diaries, unearthed from the attic like ghosts of the past, shed light on the tragic events that had unfolded within the walls of the old home. Franklin's violent outburst, the makeshift tomb in the crawl space, and Margaret's silent complicity in the aftermath all laid bare in the pages she had kept hidden for years. The case, a tapestry woven from forensic evidence and whispered secrets, reached its conclusion with the closure of Victor Mercer's chapter. Justice, though belated and cold, had finally been served. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, made the decision to sell, leaving behind a legacy of darkness and deceit. The empty halls of the Victorian home now stand silent, the echoes of the past reverberating through its walls. Local legends speak of 3 distinct knocks that pierce the stillness of the night, a haunting reminder of the secrets that lie buried within. The note, a chilling relic of a bygone era, remains in evident storage, its message a cryptic warning to those who dare to uncover the truth. Margaret's final days, plagued by the specter of the past, remained shrouded in mystery. The identity of the one who knocked, whether Mercer, Franklin, or another unseen force, lingers like a shadow in the corners of the old house. Detective Reed, in her final report, mused on the elusive nature of truth, acknowledging that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved, their enigma a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. Story 14. The tale began when Michael and Sarah Klein embarked on a journey they never anticipated within the walls of their newfound abode. In the initial days of settling into the Victorian-era home, a peculiar water stain caught Sarah's eye in the master bedroom. What seemed like a mere blemish on the aging wallpaper unraveled a hidden narrative waiting to be unveiled. As they delicately peeled back the layers of time, a name surfaced amidst the faded patterns, a name that echoed through the ages in desperate, uneven strokes. Eleanor Winters, the name repeated endlessly, etched into the walls like a haunting echo of the past. Sarah's fingertips traced the inked letters, whispering the enigmatic name into the air. Who was Eleanor Winters, and why was her name a ghostly presence within their newfound sanctuary? Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Michael delved into the depths of online archives, only to stumble upon a single thread connecting the name to a missing persons case from decades ago. The pieces of the puzzle started to align in eerie synchrony. The woman who had sold them the house, Margaret Cavendish, bore an uncanny resemblance to the missing Eleanor Winters, a resemblance that transcended time and logic, weaving a tapestry of mystery and intrigue that gripped the Kleins in its enigmatic embrace. Their nights turned into fervent investigations, tracing the footsteps of the enigmatic Margaret Cavendish through layers of forgotten history. The renovation of their dream home took a backseat as they navigated the labyrinth of secrets hidden within its walls. With each revelation, the line between reality and illusion blurred, leading them down a path fraught with uncertainty and shadows of the past. The retired detective's words lingered in the air, painting a vivid picture of a cold case that had defied resolution for decades. The discovery of hidden identities beneath the floorboards painted a portrait of deception and fractured realities. Eleanor Winters and Margaret Cavendish intertwined in a dance of tragedy and obsession that transcended the confines of time and space. The revelation of Rebecca Eldridge, the elusive figure behind the veil of identities, sent shivers down their spines. A tale of dissociative identity disorder unfolded, revealing a mind fractured by loss and obsession, clinging to fragments of truth in a world of shadows. As the investigation unfolded, the once serene abode morphed into a stage for a chilling drama of identities lost and found. The walls themselves whispered secrets of a bygone era, bearing witness to a tragedy that had remained buried beneath layers of deceit and delusion. In the end, justice found its elusive path, unraveling the tangled web of lies and truths that had woven a tapestry of mystery around the house. Eleanor Winters' long-lost truth emerged from the depths of the earth, bringing closure to a chapter lost in the annals of time. Michael and Sarah stood witness to a saga that transcended the boundaries of their reality, forever etching their dream home into the annals of true crime history. The walls that once sheltered secrets now stood as silent sentinels to a tale of intrigue, tragedy, and the enigmatic legacy of Eleanor Winters. Story 15. She wiped away the steam from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Everything seemed normal, her face familiar, her attire unchanged. Yet a subtle unease crept over her. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own making. As she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. This moment marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's unsettling journey. What unfolded would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave. Known for her meticulous nature and reserved demeanor, she led a solitary existence, though she maintained amicable relations with those living nearby. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized company dictated a life governed by routine and precision. Nothing in her demeanor hinted at the enigma that would soon envelop her, becoming the focal point of a perplexing criminal inquiry. Initially, the anomalies seemed trivial. Rebecca noticed minor displacements within her living space. Objects shifted from their usual places, a coffee mug relocated, books rearranged, her toothbrush out of place. These peculiar occurrences she attributed to lapses in memory, the consequence of long hours spent poring over spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights, straining her vision. Detective Marion Shaw's interest was piqued when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of disturbances, reached out to the authorities. The initial evaluation suggested no criminal activity, rather a matter best addressed by mental health services than law enforcement. Shaw duly noted the complaint but filed it among the stack of non-urgent cases. There was no tangible evidence, Shaw later recounted. No signs of forced entry, no missing belongings, just a woman plagued by a sense of unease within her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the incident involving the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, how a sense of being watched lingered even in solitude. This time she had proof, surveillance footage from a camera she had installed, trained on her front door. The footage unveiled a revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed 20 minutes later by someone identical to her using a key to enter her apartment. Forensic specialists meticulously scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, finding none. The individual mimicking Rebecca moved with her precision, dressed in her attire, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, corroborating timestamps from her workplace's security system showed Rebecca had already swiped into her office building across town. "We're dealing with a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has extensively studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with eerie accuracy." The investigation escalated. Fingerprints discovered throughout the apartment exclusively matched Rebecca's, with no foreign DNA detected. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, merely Rebecca's routine comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recounted a peculiar encounter where she greeted Rebecca upon her return home, receiving no response, a deviation from her usual behavior but not alarming. Rebecca began cataloging the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations within her dwelling multiplied vanished food, unexplained computer searches, and unsettling discoveries such as unfamiliar selfies on her phone. In some images, her expression appeared subtly altered, her smile too wide, her gaze too intense. "I feel as though I'm descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is intent on convincing me of it." The breakthrough materialized when a pattern emerged in the surveillance footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery trips, pre-planned activities with predictable durations. "Someone intimately familiar with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's a targeted surveillance and infiltration operation." A forensic psychologist posited the theory of fixation, a scenario where an individual becomes fixated on another, aspiring to adopt their identity, potentially supplanting them entirely. Although rare, such cases were documented in psychological literature. The culprit typically experienced a psychological rupture, fixating on a target embodying traits they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. Focus sharpened on a former colleague of Rebecca's, Lily Winters, dismissed due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often noting their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent a series of disconcerting emails to Rebecca, hinting at an unsettling connection. "We could be mirror images," one correspondence read. "At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence, unearthing a revelation that transformed the investigation from disturbing to chilling. Within one room, a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom emerged. The walls adorned with photographs, countless snapshots of Rebecca entering her home, socializing, shopping, all captured without her knowledge. The closet housed duplicates of Rebecca's wardrobe, while a vanity displayed makeup matching her preferred brands alongside detailed notes on her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily rituals. Most unsettling were the practice videos, documenting Lily's progression from clumsy mimicry to near-perfect replication of Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. "She desired to assume my identity," Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. "It wasn't merely imitation, it was erasure." Forensic experts uncovered sophisticated equipment for forging keys and replicating electronic access cards. Lily had meticulously monitored Rebecca's movements, including a calendar forecasting her schedule in intricate detail. What eluded investigators was Lily's endgame. Journals discovered at her residence contained incoherent entries shifting between first and third person, oscillating between references to Rebecca as me and her within the same passage. The final chilling entry read, "Soon there shall exist only one of us. The stronger shall endure." Upon the authorities' attempt to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her residence exhibited signs of abrupt departure, drawers ajar, certain technology absent. A nationwide alert was disseminated. Rebecca was relocated to a secure facility under continuous watch. For 3 weeks, every locale connected to her former life underwent surveillance. Lily remained elusive. The investigation took a disquieting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca had purportedly been sighted entering the premises despite being on leave. Subsequent security footage validated the claim. An individual identical to Rebecca had utilized a valid ID card to access the building, proceeded to her previous workstation, and spent 40 minutes scouring through her files before exiting. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained safeguarded in seclusion, incapable of being present at the office. The unsettling truth materialized. Lily had not fled, she had made her play. Assuming Rebecca's identity, she seamlessly stepped into her existence while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case lingered unresolved. Lily Winters remained at large. Rebecca Thorne opted not to reclaim her former life, instead forging a new persona in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk, a juxtaposition of 2 strikingly similar women. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. Sometimes Shaw scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, the nuances that would differentiate one from the other. The most chilling aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits is not that someone can mirror your appearance or emulate your speech. It's the fervor with which they aspire to supplant you, erasing themselves in the process. Identity isn't solely our outward facade, it's the core we safeguard most zealously. And at times, we only recognize its worth when someone endeavors to pilfer it. Story 16, the motel stood as a relic of forgotten days, its worn facade hiding stories best left untold. The night was thick with shadows as the weary traveler checked in, the clerk's caution lingering like a ghostly whisper. "Avoid the last door on the left," his words echoed mysteriously. Intrigued, she couldn't resist exploring. In the hushed corridor, she hesitated before the door in question. The handle chilled her fingers, hinting at secrets within. Pressing her ear to the wood, she heard a faint breath, a whisper from the unknown. Detective Morgan Reed entered the room, a scene of silent horror greeting her weary eyes. The stench of blood tainted the air, a grim reminder of life's fragility. Amidst the pristine setting, a young woman lay lifeless, her gaze fixed on eternity. Reed knelt beside the victim, absorbing the chilling details. The forensic technician's words pierced the stillness, signaling a grim pattern. 3 souls lost, their fates intertwined in tragedy. The victim's elegant attire clashed with the motel's dismal reality, a puzzle begging to be solved. Back at the precinct, Reed delved into the grim puzzle, each piece a haunting reminder of lives extinguished too soon. The autopsy report revealed a cruel truth: death by strangulation, a savage intimacy that spoke of twisted motives. Days blurred into nights as the investigation deepened, shadows of suspicion clouding the truth. A breakthrough came with a whispered revelation, a clandestine affair shrouded in darkness. The hunt led to a respected figure, his polished exterior masking a chilling secret. Charles Emerson, a man of influence, stood at the heart of the mystery. His denials clashed with damning evidence, painting a portrait of a predator in plain sight. The courtroom drama unfolded, exposing the darkness within a man of privilege. Reed's gaze met his, a brief exchange revealing the void that lurked behind his facade. Trial ended, justice served, yet the echoes of the door on the left case lingered in Reed's mind. The keys to forgotten rooms, silent witnesses to unspeakable deeds, remained locked away, a reminder that some doors should never be opened. In the quiet of night, Reed wandered hotel corridors, shadows dancing in her wake, pondering the secrets that lay hidden behind closed doors. The tale of the motel's last door echoed through time, a cautionary whisper to those who dared to seek the truth in the shadows of the night. Story 17. In the quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious parcel arrived for Sarah Miller. It came in a plain envelope, devoid of a return address. Inside, nestled safely, was a single worn brass key. Sarah's fingers hesitated over its cool metal, a sense of familiarity stirring within her, though she couldn't place it. She tried the key in every lock she owned, but none yielded to its touch. It belonged to no door in her home. Perplexed, she set it down on the coffee table, where a hush fell over the room, broken only by a single, eerie chime from the old grandfather clock in the hallway, a clock long silenced, its gears rusted in stillness. Sarah felt a shiver of unease crawl down her spine. Something about this key, this inexplicable event, whispered of an unseen shadow creeping into her peaceful existence. With a trembling hand, she contacted the authorities, sharing the strange tale of the brass key that defied explanation. At first, the responding officer brushed off her concerns, attributing it to a simple mailing mishap. But Sarah's intuition, her gut feeling, insisted that there was more to this enigmatic key than met the eye. Reluctantly, the officer took the key into custody, sealing it in a small evidence bag, a seemingly insignificant item that would unfurl a web of darkness across the tranquil neighborhood. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator from the Special Victims Unit, found himself drawn into the enigma of the brass key. As he reviewed the case file, a sense of disquiet settled upon him, the key resting unassumingly on his desk. Background checks on Sarah revealed a life of quiet normalcy, devoid of any hint of wrongdoing. Yet the key held secrets that whispered of a sinister past. Forensic examinations yielded no fingerprints save for Sarah's delicate touch. The envelope divulged no clues, bearing only a nondescript postmark from a distant distribution center. The key itself, a humble schlage, bore the scars of time, hinting at a hidden history. It was only when Detective Harmon delved deeper, running the key's unique pattern through the department database, that the shadows of the past began to stir. 7 years prior, an unsolved case bore the mark of an identical key, pattern a key linked to a storage unit where horrors had been hidden in the darkness. Blood-stained carpets, tools of cutting, and haunting photographs of unnamed women painted a macabre picture of the past. The original investigation had faltered, the suspect slipping through the cracks of justice. But now the key had resurfaced, unlocking a door to a nightmare long thought buried. As Detective Harmon pored over the dusty case files, a chilling realization dawned. The key was a harbinger of darkness, a link to a predator lurking in the shadows. Harold Jenkins, a ghost from the past, had cast a long shadow over the unsuspecting neighborhood. His ties to Sarah, however tenuous, hinted at a malevolent game being played, one where the stakes were lives. The hunt for Jenkins intensified, each step unearthing a new layer of horror. His trail, shrouded in mystery, led to a secluded cabin, a place of secrets and shadows. Beneath the creaking floorboards, a hidden room revealed a trove of keys, each bearing a name and a date, a grim ledger of lives taken. The truth, long buried, clawed its way to the surface as forensic teams uncovered the grim remnants of Jenkins' atrocities. Sarah, now a reluctant player in this deadly game, found herself at the center of a storm of darkness. The press branded Jenkins the keymaster, a moniker that sent shivers through the community. As the manhunt expanded, fear gripped the hearts of residents, the specter of evil haunting their every step. In the heart of the wilderness, a final reckoning awaited. Jenkins, cornered and desperate, chose to meet his fate on his own terms. As authorities closed in, a journal, a chilling testament to his crimes, spoke of twisted desires and hidden obsessions. The truth, laid bare in his words, painted a portrait of a predator who had walked among them, unseen and unchecked. The hunt ended in tragedy, Jenkins taking his own life rather than face justice. But his legacy, his dark shadow, lingered on. The keys, silent witnesses to unspeakable horrors, whispered of lives lost and futures stolen. Sarah, forever changed by the brush of darkness, found solace in knowing that justice, though late, had been served. The grandfather clock, its hollow chime a harbinger of the storm that had passed, stood silent, once more a sentinel of time, watching over a world forever altered by the echoes of a nightmare that had come too close to home. And in the quiet of the night, as the world drifted into slumber, the story of the brass key and the darkness it unlocked faded into the realm of dreams, where shadows danced on the edge of memory, waiting to be forgotten. Story 18, The Enigmatic Victorian. She entered through the front door, the dust dancing in the quiet, abandoned air. The house stood frozen in time, its walls shedding layers of paint, its furniture draped in ghostly sheets. As she wandered through its halls, she found herself in a peculiar loop, all the doors leading back to the same parlor. No matter which path she chose, she always returned to where she began. The only escape seemed to be the entrance she had come through. But when she glanced back, the front door had vanished into thin air. The sudden discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body turned the once forgotten Victorian into a scene of mystery and dread. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing as forensic experts moved through the dim rooms like silent spirits. The house had garnered a reputation among the locals, a place where compasses spun aimlessly and whispers of unseen eyes lingered in the shadows. Now it held secrets far more chilling than mere urban legends. The initial assessment suggests she passed approximately 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible. It appears she died from asphyxiation. Morgan was found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, facing the entrance as if anticipating a visitor. Her expression was serene, hands gracefully folded in her lap. There were no signs of struggle, no marks of resistance. The scene exuded a stillness that unsettled even the most seasoned investigators. Lind inquired who discovered the body. Her partner replied, a real estate agent showing the property stumbled upon her. At first they mistook her for a trespasser until they drew near. The house had remained empty since the passing of its previous owner, Alina Blackwood, nearly 5 years earlier. Legal disputes had left the estate in abandonment, a place unwanted, unsold, and largely forgotten, except by those seeking thrills or mischief. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, possessed a meticulous nature, an insatiable drive, and a fascination with spaces that defied conventional norms. The enigmatic Victorian, with its reputation for disorienting visitors, must have tantalized her curious spirit. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days prior, Lind noted, reviewing her notes. Morgan mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. The investigation unveiled Morgan's repeated visits to the house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled bizarre acoustics, chilling cold spots, and doors that defied logic by leading to different chambers each time they were opened. In her final journal entry, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to capture what she referred to as spatial irregularities. Curiously, this equipment was nowhere to be found. During the autopsy, a surprising revelation surfaced: traces of a rare alkaloid derived from a plant used in shamanic rituals were discovered in Morgan's system. While the substance could induce disorientation and vivid visions, the amount found was insufficient to be fatal. She was not one to indulge in recreational substances, her boyfriend insisted adamantly. Morgan was meticulous in her research practices and would not have jeopardized her perception knowingly. Through digital investigation, fragments of deleted messages on Morgan's phone were recovered. Conversations with an individual sharing her fascination with the house, someone claiming to comprehend its enigmas, grew increasingly intimate and cryptic. The house holds memories of its past, one message revealed. It yearns for someone to unravel its mysteries. Trail led the detectives to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had engaged in correspondence with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captivated her, and their professional alliance had evolved into a more personal connection. When questioned, Reeves expressed genuine anguish over Morgan's demise. "The house has a reputation," he explained. Its original architect incorporated optical illusions and deceptive perspectives. It was designed to bewilder and disorient. Morgan believed there was a deeper truth to it, a reality beyond mere tricks of architecture. Despite Reeves having a solid alibi for the suspected time of death confirmed by security footage showing him lecturing at a university symposium miles away, the investigation took an unforeseen turn. Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, residing abroad, disclosed a long-concealed family secret when contacted by the authorities. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish in that house," he divulged. "There were others, always found in the parlor, always in a peaceful repose." The family dubbed it the claiming. He handed over decades-old journals recounting deaths initially attributed to natural causes like heart failure or stroke. A chilling pattern emerged: individuals spending extended periods within the house, eventually succumbing to what the family cryptically termed the influence. Further exploration of the property unveiled a hidden compartment concealed behind the parlor's fireplace. Inside, investigators unearthed Morgan's missing equipment along with a startling discovery. A small chamber harbored artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, meticulously arranged in a geometric formation. At its center rested a weathered figurine, its features smoothed by generations of touch. Analysis identified the figurine as a representation of a deity linked to liminal spaces, those thresholds between realms. Residues on the artifacts matched the alkaloid present in Morgan's system. The case took a darker turn as forensic analysis of dust patterns within the house revealed the presence of another individual at the time of Morgan's demise. Partial fingerprints, incongruent with Morgan's or any known visitors, were retrieved from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his residence, seated towards the entrance with a serene countenance, bearing the same alkaloid in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that unlocked no door within his abode, but seamlessly fitted into the concealed compartment within the Victorian. In his final correspondence, sent to himself as though preserving a testament, Reeves composed, "The house does not imprison you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan discerned the truth: the doors led where they always have, but something compels you to believe you are turning in circles. Once you grasp the reality, you can depart at any moment, yet by then you may find yourself unwilling to leave. The case remains officially unresolved, designated as suspicious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian has since been condemned, its access restricted by authorities. Nevertheless, whispers persist of ethereal lights flickering within its walls on certain nights, and of visitors who venture in but never re-emerge. Some locals assert that the house claims those who delve too deeply into its secrets. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves unearthed a force ancient and potent, existing within the interstices of conventional reality. The truth remains as elusive as an exit within a house where every door leads back to the beginning. Story 19. As the new homeowners settled into their Victorian manor, they were charmed by its old intercom system that crackled with a mysterious energy late at night. The system, a relic from a bygone era, had been rewired but remained largely forgotten until one fateful night. Curiosity got the best of the husband, leading him to press the intercom button, only to be met with a chilling whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" The voice crackled through the speaker, causing him to jolt back in shock. His wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those words, creating an unsettling tension in the air. The manor, nestled among ancient oak trees, exuded an aura of both tranquility and mystery. Daniel and Meredith Parker, the new owners, had been drawn to the property not only for its historical charm, but also for the inexplicable allure of the intercom system. Little did they know that this vintage feature would unravel a dark and tragic tale hidden within the walls of their new home. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a potential break-in, but she sensed that there was more to the story than met the eye. Daniel, with a pallor that belied a deep unease, recounted the strange occurrences involving the intercom system. Whispers, once dismissed as mere static, had escalated into full sentences that seemed to echo from another time. Meredith, visibly shaken, revealed a startling discovery they had made behind a wall during renovations: an old leather-bound journal belonging to a previous owner named Alina. The journal chronicled Alina's growing fear of her husband Vincent, hinting at a sinister plot against her. The final entry, dated 30 years ago, marked the abrupt end of Alina's entries, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. The investigation into the Blackwood family's dark past uncovered a web of deceit and betrayal. Vincent and Alina Blackwood, the former owners of the manor, had a tumultuous history marred by secrets and tragedy. The discovery of human remains buried beneath the garden shed confirmed the long-held suspicions of foul play. Vincent Blackwood, now a frail old man residing in a care facility, confessed to the murder of his wife, Alina. His chilling account of silencing her through deception and violence sent a shiver down the detective's spine. The intricate web of lies he had spun over the years unraveled in the face of undeniable evidence, leading to his conviction for a crime that had remained hidden for decades. As the case came to a close, Daniel and Meredith chose to part ways with the manor, unable to bear the weight of its dark history. A solemn memorial service held for Alina in the gardens served as a final farewell, a closure to a chapter tainted by tragedy. The intercom system, a silent witness to the past, was removed during renovations by the new owners, its whispers fading into the echoes of time. Detective Reeves, reflecting on the case that had gripped her, drove past the manor one last time, listening for the faint whispers that seemed to linger in the air, a reminder of the house's haunting secrets and the justice that had finally been served. Story 20. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded borders, capturing a birthday celebration frozen in time. Faces beamed with joy, candles flickering innocently in the background, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. But when the daughter inherited the box of forgotten photos, a chilling discovery awaited her. Amidst the familiar faces there lurked a mysterious figure, a man half shrouded in shadow, standing just beyond the reach of the glowing candles. He was not part of the family. No one recalled his presence, Yet in each photo he drew closer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the unsettling collection while clearing out her mother's attic following the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories revealed a treasure trove of moments from her childhood, now tainted with an eerie presence. The initial comfort of nostalgia twisted into the beginnings of a haunting nightmare. In the first photo, the figure was barely discernible, a dark silhouette lingering at the periphery during a long-past birthday party. Moving on to the subsequent snapshots, his presence grew more pronounced. By the third photo, he loomed ominously behind her unsuspecting uncle, unnoticed by all captured in the frame. With a trembling voice, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers to the enigmatic figure haunting their family photos. "Dad, who is this man in the background of these pictures?" A sharp intake of breath followed by a heavy silence filled the air before her father finally responded, his voice tinged with unease. "What man? There should be no one but family." Seeking clarity, Sarah sent digital copies of the Polaroids to her father, only to receive a frantic call in return. "That's impossible. We would have noticed a stranger," her father's shaken voice confessed. Determined to unravel the mystery, Sarah sought the help of Detective Marcus Reed, laying out the eerie progression of the figure through the photographs on his desk. As rain tapped against the windows, casting dancing shadows within the precinct, the detective meticulously studied the evidence before him. His weathered hands traced the eerie trail left by the mysterious man, inching closer to the unsuspecting children in each successive photo. A sense of foreboding crept into the room as the figure's calculated movements became undeniable. "The photographer," Reed suggested, a hint of doubt coloring his words. But Sarah was quick to dispel any uncertainty, revealing that her mother had been behind the camera, setting the timer before stepping into the frame herself. Opening a case file, the detective delved into a thorough investigation, reaching out to all surviving attendees of the party captured in the photos. Yet no one could recall the presence of the enigmatic man. No hired servers, no visiting neighbors, just a remote countryside property chosen for its seclusion. The figure remained elusive, strategically obscured in each shot, as if aware of the camera's gaze. Just as the investigation teetered on the brink of stagnation, Sarah unearthed more photos from different family albums, spanning various gatherings and years. The figure persisted, a spectral presence haunting the edges of each joyous occasion. With the aid of a computer specialist, hidden details emerged under scrutiny: a scar, a ring, a glimpse of a face previously shrouded in darkness. A breakthrough came in the form of dental records, linking the figure in the photos to Robert Keller, a long-missing maintenance worker suspected of involvement in past child abductions. Keller's connection to the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had taken place, along with his history of disappearing after previous investigations, painted a chilling picture of hidden horrors. Authorities, armed with newfound evidence, searched Keller's former residence, unearthing chilling artifacts buried beneath the concrete: a hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, all belonging to missing children from cases long gone cold. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, connecting unsolved mysteries across decades. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the haunting photos, Sarah received the grim news from the detective. A missing child's remains had been identified near one of the vacation properties. The final birthday photo stared back at her, the figure's presence lingering in the shadows, a silent witness to the unfathomable tragedies that had unfolded. The families affected by the long-standing mysteries finally found closure, albeit through a lens of sorrow and loss. The shadow in the family photos, once a spectral enigma, had been brought into the harsh light of justice, his malevolent presence acknowledged at last. As Sarah carefully returned the photos to their box, they stood as a chilling reminder that sometimes the darkest threats lurk unseen in the captured moments of joy, moving undetected through the pages of time. Story 21. The parcel arrived without a hint of its origin, shrouded in mystery with no return label or tracking number. Sarah Miller, a resident of the tranquil suburban neighborhood, found herself at a crossroads when faced with the enigmatic cardboard box left on her doorstep. The package bore her correct address, yet the name inscribed on it, Daniel Whitaker, was unfamiliar to her. Ignoring it would have been the prudent choice, leaving it untouched on the porch to remain a mystery. But curiosity, that persistent whisper in the mind, prevailed over reason. Gently peeling back the tape that sealed the box, Sarah expected mundane contents like books or clothing. However, what lay inside was far from ordinary, a solitary VHS tape accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing the cryptic instruction, "Watch alone." The weight of the black plastic cassette felt oddly substantial in her hands, as if it carried the burden of forbidden knowledge within its confines. Tracing her fingers along the worn edges of the tape, Sarah pondered the significance of this unexpected delivery. The handwritten note displayed a sense of urgency, each stroke on the paper imbued with a silent plea for attention. Meanwhile, the backdrop of her familiar surroundings continued its rhythmic symphony, the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of children playing, the distant drone of a lawnmower unperturbed by the arrival of the mysterious package. Bringing the package indoors, Sarah hesitated before placing it on her kitchen counter. The name Daniel Whitaker lingered in her thoughts, a name that held no place in her memories. The previous occupants of her home, the Johnsons, were the only ones she knew of who had dwelled within these walls. The inner conflict of curiosity versus trepidation waged a silent war within her as she glanced towards her dusty VCR, a relic of another era kept for sentimental reasons. In a moment of impulse, Sarah succumbed to the pull of the unknown and inserted the tape into the machine. Static flickered on the screen, gradually sharpening into focus to reveal a dimly lit room illuminated by a solitary lamp. The camera angle was askew, lending an air of urgency to the scene. A man sat in a wooden chair, his features initially obscured by shadows, as he began to speak in a hushed yet resolute tone. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," the man's voice resonated through the room. "If you are watching this, then someone has found you, and that means they will find me as well." As he leaned forward, his wearied countenance came into view, eyes etched with exhaustion, stubble hinting at sleepless nights, and disheveled hair framing a face haunted by unseen burdens. In a confessional tone, Daniel spoke of his innocence in the face of damning evidence, vehemently denying any involvement in the heinous crime he was accused of. The camera trembled slightly as he adjusted it, offering glimpses of the bare walls and sparse furnishings that defined his transient existence, a life poised on the brink of flight. "They framed me," Daniel's voice wavered with emotion. "Planted evidence to make me the scapegoat for a crime I never committed. Catherine Walsh's murder was a tragedy, but I was not the perpetrator they claim me to be." The revelations unfolded as he recounted the events leading to his unjust persecution, painting a portrait of a man ensnared in a web of deceit spun by unseen hands. Meanwhile, Detective Eliza Ramirez, tasked with unraveling the tangled threads of the case, found herself at a crossroads as she delved deeper into the enigma surrounding Daniel Whitaker. The emergence of multiple VHS tapes, each bearing a plea for justice from the accused, hinted at a conspiracy far more sinister than a simple murder investigation. The pieces of the puzzle began to coalesce as Ramirez connected the dots between Catherine Walsh's untimely demise and her involvement in a whistleblower case against a powerful pharmaceutical corporation. The shadow of PharmaCorp loomed over the investigation, casting doubts on the integrity of the evidence that had once seemed irrefutable. As Ramirez pieced together the fragments of truth scattered amidst a landscape of deception, the narrative took an unexpected turn. The arrival of a second package at Sarah Miller's doorstep unveiled a trove of incriminating documents, shedding light on the nefarious machinations of those who sought to silence the voice of justice. With each revelation, the veil of lies began to unravel, exposing the sinister underbelly of corporate greed and manipulation. Daniel Whitaker's journey from accused fugitive to unwitting hero bore witness to the transformative power of truth in the face of orchestrated deception. In a climactic moment of revelation, Sarah Miller, armed with keen observation and unwavering determination, uncovered a crucial detail that would turn the tide of the investigation. A reflection captured in the background of Whitaker's tape led to the discovery of a hidden storage unit, a repository of damning evidence that laid bare the machinations of those who sought to bury the truth. Justice, elusive yet inexorable, found its way through the diligent efforts of those who refused to turn a blind eye to the injustices perpetrated in the shadows. The downfall of the malevolent forces at play marked a triumph of integrity over deception, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. As Daniel Whitaker emerged from the shadows of suspicion, vindicated by the unwavering pursuit of truth, Sarah Miller stood as a silent witness to the power of serendipity in a world fraught with duplicity. Their paths intertwined in a moment of shared understanding, a recognition of the fragile balance between truth and falsehood that defined their fateful encounter. The legacy of the VHS tapes, relics of a bygone era, served as a poignant reminder that the quest for justice knows no bounds, transcending barriers of time and technology. And in the quietude of the night, as the world drifted into slumber, the echoes of a story untold whispered softly, carrying with them the promise of redemption and the enduring allure of mystery. Story 22. The quaint costume shop was closing its doors, offering up remnants of the past to eager bargain hunters. Among the fading treasures, a mysterious mask caught the eye of a woman named Catherine Reed. Nestled on a forgotten shelf, its delicate features exuded an uncanny lifelike quality that stirred something deep within her. Placing the mask on the counter for purchase, the cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease in his eyes as he muttered, "That's not ours." Perplexed, Catherine searched for a tag, but none was to be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to bring the enigmatic mask home. That night, a soft, rustling sound roused Catherine from her slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting through the stillness. Startled, she turned to find the mask had vanished from its place on the dresser, only to reappear on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her like an unblinking sentinel. Days later, Catherine's neighbor ventured over, intending to return a borrowed book. What he stumbled upon instead was a chilling scene that would linger in the minds of all who bore witness. The front door stood ajar, allowing the morning light to spill hesitantly into the dim interior of Catherine's home. There she lay, motionless on her bedroom floor, the haunting mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Morgan arrived at the somber scene, where forensics meticulously documented every detail. The rhythmic click of camera shutters punctuated the hushed whispers that filled the room. An officer remarked on the absence of forced entry, jotting down notes in his pad as the detective's keen eyes scanned the room for clues. A lone drawer stood partially ajar, a lipstick-stained water glass perched on the nightstand. Everything appeared ordinary except for the life extinguished before its time. The medical examiner's solemn visage betrayed the mystery that shrouded Catherine's demise. Initial findings yielded no clear cause of death, no visible wounds, no signs of struggle. Pointing to her frozen expression of terror, he somberly noted the fear etched into her features. Catherine, known for her discerning eye as an art appraiser, was described by colleagues as meticulous and dedicated to uncovering authenticity. Her boss recalled her uncanny ability to spot even the subtlest of forgeries. The detective pondered whether this keen perception had unwittingly led her down a path toward tragedy. Reviewing security footage from the costume shop, a peculiar revelation emerged. The cashier's genuine confusion regarding the mask's origins piqued the detective's interest. Further investigation revealed a troubling history linked to the mask's sudden appearance during the shop's clearance sale. The shop owner, fraught with nervous energy, disclosed the mask's mysterious arrival, recounting tales of strange occurrences following the acquisition of items from a deceased collector's estate sale, a collector whose untimely demise bore an air of the inexplicable. A breakthrough in the case came with the discovery of microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips. These fibers, of an otherworldly nature, proved unidentifiable, a blend of human hair and an organic substance that defied conventional analysis. This revelation unearthed a pattern of similar deaths stretching back through the annals of time, each victim linked by the acquisition of a malevolent mask and a shared expression of unbridled terror. Consulting with a retired detective versed in a similar case, the current investigator unearthed a chilling truth. Inside each mask lay ancient symbols hinting at a ritual involving the transference of souls, a dark legacy that transcended generations. A journal hidden within Catherine's apartment shed light on her unraveling descent into a realm of fear and paranoia. Entries detailed her growing awareness of the mask's sinister nature, its spectral presence haunting her every waking moment. Her research unveiled a macabre connection between the mask and a series of tragic deaths, a cycle of malevolence that demanded a new host with each passing. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the medical examiner confirmed the cause of Catherine's demise: cardiac arrest induced by sheer terror. What unseen horror could provoke such a primal response, freezing her heart in its final beats? The investigation took a harrowing turn when surveillance footage from a neighboring residence captured a figure exiting Catherine's abode. Adorned with a mask that mirrored her likeness, but moved with an eerie mechanical precision, a grotesque mimicry of life itself. Despite efforts to track down the elusive mask, it slipped through their grasp, resurfacing months later in a distant vintage shop, its macabre allure drawing in an unwitting buyer. The trail grew cold, the mask's whereabouts unknown, leaving a shroud of unsolved mystery in its wake. The detective, burdened by the weight of unresolved truth, safeguarded Catherine's journal, a testament to a reality too bizarre for official records. In the quiet of night, she would startle awake, a sense of being watched lingering in the shadows. Securing her surroundings, she dared not dwell on the malevolent mask that awaited its next unwitting victim, perpetuating a cycle of terror that spanned centuries. The mask, a harbinger of dread, lay dormant, biding its time until fate guided it once more into the hands of an unsuspecting soul. And when that moment arrived, another would awaken to the chilling presence of empty eyes fixed upon them, a vessel hungry for the essence that dwelled within. Story 23. The aged crate lay hidden beneath layers of clutter in the attic, a forgotten treasure from past occupants of the house. Among its contents were faded snapshots capturing moments of joy and celebration, harmless memories, harmless until she reached the final picture. It depicted her very own living room with familiar furniture and decor, yet the family pictured was not hers. And in the background, barely discernible in the dimness, a figure loomed in the hallway observing. Rebecca shuddered as she scrutinized the photo. Her fingers quivered, causing the edges of the photograph to tremble. The family in the image, a woman with golden locks, a man with thick spectacles, and two children beamed at the camera, oblivious to the lurking presence in the shadows behind them. Their smiles frozen in time, blissful ignorance contrasting with the lurking danger nearby. She descended the creaking wooden stairs, the weight of the house pressing down on her like a suffocating blanket. Placing the photograph on her kitchen counter, she gazed at it under the harsh fluorescent glare. The resemblance to her home was uncanny, the archway, the ornate molding, the bay window. This was her sanctuary, yet these faces were strangers. The arrival of Detective Morgan brought a sense of intrigue. Clad in a worn leather jacket, his keen eyes scanned the photograph with meticulous precision. Running a gloved finger along the edge, he turned it over to reveal a blank back. "What do you know about the previous owners, the Nelsons?" he inquired, his voice a low rumble. "Very little," Rebecca confessed. "They had already moved out of state when I bought the house." Morgan's stoic nod revealed nothing as he proposed taking the photo for further investigation. The inquiry commenced quietly, unveiling a trail of former residents. The Nelsons had acquired the property from the Crawfords, who had resided there for 7 years before vanishing abruptly. Prior to them, the Mornos had called the house their own for nearly a decade. Detective Morgan meticulously traced the history, interviewing neighbors and delving into property records. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. A former mail carrier identified the family in the photo as the Sutherlands. They lived there for a year before disappearing without a trace, he stated definitively. Mail piled up, neighbors assumed they had left quietly, no forwarding address, no signs of relocation. The Sutherlands had simply evaporated, 4 souls gone without a whisper, no footprints left behind, as if they had dissolved into thin air. Forensic analysis dated the photograph to 15 years prior, revealing peculiar details: the suspended dust particles, the unnaturally static subjects. A timed shot, the technician explained. They were posed deliberately. Someone set the camera and hurried into position. But if the Sutherlands were behind the camera, who was the enigmatic figure in the hallway? Enhanced imaging disclosed more about the shadowy watcher, tall, male, clad in darkness. His face obscured, yet his presence palpable, as if he belonged there, as if he had always lurked within those walls. A pattern emerged: families preceding the Sutherlands had vanished after a year of occupancy. 5 families in 5 years, swallowed by the house's insidious grip. Records from the house's construction hinted at a dark past. The architect had vanished near completion, replaced by Samuel Whitfield, a man who breathed life into the structure. Police archives held a single photograph of Whitfield, a haunting figure with sunken eyes and a penetrating gaze. When aged digitally, a chilling resemblance to the figure in the photo emerged. Yet Whitfield had met his demise in a construction accident, his body lost to the rubble. The basement became the focal point, revealing anomalies beneath the concrete. As jackhammers pierced the surface, a putrid odor assaulted their senses. Beneath layers of soil and concrete lay the missing families, preserved in the earth's embrace. Among their belongings, the same camera that had captured the Polaroid, along with a trove of other snapshots, each depicting a different family, blissfully unaware of the lurking presence. The house was sealed off, a haunting crime scene. Rebecca would never return. In the attic's hidden crawl space, they uncovered a cot, cameras, and a journal chronicling the families in meticulous detail. The final entry, dated mere days earlier, hinted at a sinister plan unfolding. Rebecca sought refuge in a hotel, shielded by police vigilance. In the dead of the night, a call pierced the silence, followed by the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera. The investigation lingers, the house's secrets shrouded in darkness. Samuel Whitfield remains elusive, his existence a perplexing enigma. Some believe he perished long ago, while others insist he haunts new abodes, new identities. Amidst the shadows, photographs develop, capturing new families, new homes, new watchers. Those who delve into the enigma of the man in the photo find themselves under scrutiny, watched by unseen eyes. The house stands silent, concealing its mysteries, a testament to the darkness that dwells within its walls. Story 24. The worn envelope, its edges tinged with age, bore a fresh stamp as if it had been sent just moments before. With cautious hands, the detective unfolded it, revealing a single sheet of paper. The message upon it was hurriedly typed in an uneven font. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, carrying with it a metallic scent that lingered in the air. It was then that the detective noticed a reddish smear along the bottom edge, a sinister mark that was not made by any ordinary ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, her gloved fingers moving with precision, placed the letter into an evidence bag. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The reddish stain was indeed human blood, and it matched the DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had haunted the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes strewn across the floor, hinting that the attack may have been linked to a story she was investigating. Despite tireless efforts, the case had gone cold, until this letter arrived at the police department, simply addressed to Homicide Division. Few fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, only faint smudges hinting that the sender had taken precautions, wearing gloves. The postmark provided a much-needed light after months of stagnation. Gathering her team in the briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the image of the letter at the center of the board, a pivotal moment in their pursuit of justice. "This changes everything," she declared to the room. "Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, Morgan's steadfast partner since the case's inception, scrutinized the letter. "Or perhaps they wish us to believe so," he proposed. "The blood could be a macabre act, a taunting gesture." Tracing the unique typewriter impression to a model long out of production, the forensics team embarked on a hunt through antique shops and collectors across the region. Simultaneously, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life. Described as tenacious by her editor, dedicated to uncovering corruption, Rebecca had been investigating a wealthy family entrenched in local politics. Following the recent demise of the family patriarch, discord reigned among the siblings, each accusing the other of deceit. Interviewing Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, revealed a shift in his demeanor since the arrival of the letter. Rebecca spoke of being followed, he confessed. "I dismissed it as paranoia related to her investigation. I should have listened." As the detectives pursued this lead, a second letter materialized, bearing the same typewritten message in blood. This time the confession was more detailed. She delved too deeply into the family's secrets, the inheritance, what transpired with the old man. "It was never my intent for things to escalate to that extent." The investigation led them to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, possessed a collection of antique typewriters. His explanation seemed rehearsed, his demeanor too composed. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers on the envelopes matched custom stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Upon interrogation, Eleanor divulged that Richard had borrowed her stationery a month prior. A search of Richard's residence unveiled a hidden chamber housing incriminating evidence, newspaper clippings about Rebecca, surveillance imagery, and a vintage typewriter identical to the one used for the letters, the blood confirming its connection to the victim. Unexpectedly, a financial link between Richard and Michael surfaced, with substantial payments preceding Rebecca's murder. Confronted, Michael confessed, revealing a sinister plot to intimidate Rebecca into silence, unaware of the tragic outcome that awaited her. Eleanor provided a crucial piece of evidence, a recording capturing Richard and Michael discussing Rebecca's fate. Richard's damning words resounded, "She must be silenced permanently." Attempting to flee, Richard was apprehended, while Michael cooperated in exchange for a plea deal. Throughout the trial, Richard adamantly professed his innocence, accusing Michael of framing him. Yet the weight of evidence was insurmountable. The jury swiftly reached a guilty verdict, sealing Richard's fate. Approaching Rebecca's grieving parents in the courtroom, Detective Morgan offered solace, a meager comfort in the wake of their irreparable loss. The blood-stained letters remained in evidence storage, a somber reminder that even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes leave traces, and that remorse, whether genuine or feigned, can unravel the facade of a perfect crime. The saga of Rebecca Warren transcended its confines, becoming a cornerstone in detective training, a testament to the profound impact of a vintage typewriter and the burden of guilt that eventually consumes those who believe they have evaded justice. Story 25. In the old apartment, peculiar sounds echoed through the pipes and creaky floorboards added to the ambience. But the newest resident, a young woman named Sarah, sensed that what she heard wasn't ordinary. The footsteps above her were too steady, too purposeful, yet she resided on the top floor alone. One fateful night, she mustered the courage to tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound abruptly ceased, leaving behind an eerie silence. Then a solitary knock reverberated back to her from within the ceiling itself. Sarah chose to keep the knocking incident to herself, attributing it to the building's settling or perhaps a small creature that had wandered into the attic space. Despite the nightly continuation of the footsteps, she adapted by increasing the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, anything to drown out the rhythmic footfalls traversing her ceiling in the darkness. Detective Morris stumbled upon the apartment's unsettling mystery when a maintenance worker unearthed a hidden crawlspace during routine repairs. While fixing a leak outside Sarah's unit, the worker uncovered a narrow passage hidden behind a section of drywall that defied the building's original blueprints. Illuminated by his flashlight, the passage revealed a makeshift living area filled with discarded food wrappers, water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small notebook. Alarmed, the building superintendent promptly contacted the police. Detective Morris, along with his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken, muttering about someone living within the walls, someone watching. The notebook contained meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routine, visitors, meals, TV preferences, bathing times. The neat handwriting descended into chaos towards the end, with strange symbols adorning the margins. The subject no longer responds to my signals, the final entry read. She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me. Forensic teams delved into the crawl space, uncovering fingerprints that matched no known records. They unearthed a labyrinthine network of passages woven into the building's walls and ceilings, some dating back decades. These passages linked to 5 different apartments, culminating in viewing points disguised as innocuous fixtures within only one unit, Sarah Coleman's. Interviews with current residents yielded no unusual occurrences, but former tenants painted a different picture. 3 previous occupants of Sarah's apartment spoke of feeling watched or hearing unexplained movements, prompting one to vacate after a mere fortnight. None had spoken up, fearing they would be dismissed as paranoid. The investigation took a chilling turn when forensics detected microscopic blood spatter in one of the crawl spaces, matching the DNA of Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. Martin had lived directly below Sarah's unit. As Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance, a pattern emerged. Martin had confronted a reclusive neighbor named Edward about noises from above his apartment before his sudden disappearance. Edward had quietly left the building soon after, leaving no forwarding information. Following Edward's rental history revealed a recurring theme: top-floor residences, minimal social connections, and abrupt departures. A neighbor from Edward's past recalled his intensity and complaints about needing silence. Property records unveiled Edward's rural property, where investigators uncovered a cabin adorned with photographs and notes detailing residents from various apartment buildings, including Sarah and Martin. Maps outlining ventilation systems and weak spots in structures were accompanied by journals chronicling specimen observations and habitat maintenance. At the cabin's center, a corkboard displayed newspaper clippings of missing persons, report 6 in total, all former residents of buildings Edward had occupied. Beneath the board, deep scratches marred the wooden floor, hinting at a heavy object dragged repeatedly. Behind the cabin, cadaver dogs unearthed freshly disturbed soil, revealing multiple graves. While forensic specialists worked to identify the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's building. Although the crawl spaces had been sealed, residents reported sporadic noises. During security system installation, maintenance workers uncovered a second notebook hidden at the junction of a wall and sealing a newer addition to the chilling collection. The initial page bore a single ominous message: "They found my old nest, but not my new one." Comparing the writings, it was evident they belonged to the same author. The final page of the new notebook featured a crude sketch of Sarah's apartment layout, with a red-marked passage and a date for that very night. Rushing to Sarah's unit, officers found it deserted. Her phone rested on the counter, television murmured softly, and the sound of running water echoed through the apartment. In the bathroom, a message materialized on the fogged mirror, scrawled by a finger: "Look up." Above the shower, a ceiling panel had been removed. The hunt for Edward, now known as Edward Mercer, a former construction worker skilled in renovations, persisted. His mastery of building structures had facilitated the creation of his clandestine network of passages and observation points. Thermal imaging scans showed no evidence of current occupancy within the walls of Sarah's building. Sarah Coleman remained missing, her case tied to vanishing acts across multiple states. Authorities warned apartment managers about unauthorized modifications and concealed spaces. For Detective Morris, the haunting image was not the graves or journals, but the memory of Sarah, hearing those footsteps above her in a supposedly empty apartment. The footsteps that ceased when she knocked, only to echo back. Sometimes, in the hush of his own home, Detective Morris found himself gazing upward, listening intently, pondering who else might be listening in return. Story 26. In the dim light of the attic, nestled beneath a worn blanket, they discovered it. a porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, its blue eyes staring ahead, unmoving. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently acquired the old Victorian house, stumbled upon this forgotten relic with a mix of amusement and curiosity. Little did they know this chance encounter would unravel a tale steeped in mystery. As night descended and they retired to their bed, a subtle shift in the air caught their attention. A heaviness lingered, the silence deepened, and when morning broke, the doll was no longer perched in the attic shadows. It had silently made its way to the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel in the darkness. The history of their new abode was cloaked in whispers of a troubled past, yet its allure had drawn Sarah and Michael in, captivated by the intricate woodwork and enigmatic charm. But soon they found themselves entwined in a narrative not of their making. Detective Rachel Winters, a figure shrouded in quiet determination, entered the scene on a crisp autumn day. The master bedroom revealed a grim tableau, the female victim posed in a macabre stance, limbs contorted in an unnatural arrangement, eyes wide with fear. Nearby, the male victim seemed frozen mid-flight, a desperate attempt to escape an unseen threat. With precision and care, Detective Winters noted each detail, her voice a soft murmur against the backdrop of the haunting crime scene. The positioning of the victims hinted at a deliberate act, a chilling resemblance to dolls plucked from their display. The investigation unfurled like a tapestry of shadows and echoes. Neighbors whispered of spectral sightings, a shadow flitting past a window, a child's laughter dancing in the night air. The forensic team uncovered traces of vintage fabrics, akin to those used in antique doll clothing, weaving a sinister thread through the narrative. Records of the house's past unraveled a grim tapestry, previous owners meeting mysterious fates, each death shrouded in enigmatic circumstances. A newspaper clipping whispered of a doll maker and his tragic daughter, their lives intertwined with the very walls of the house. As Detective Winters delved deeper, a pattern emerged. The victims, including Sarah and Michael, had all sought to alter the attic's space, unknowingly awakening a dormant presence within the aged walls. Hidden photographs hinted at a malevolent force, a doll that transcended time and reason, its porcelain visage a harbinger of doom. The revelation of esoteric rituals and whispered secrets cast a pall over the investigation, leading to a dead end shrouded in uncertainty. The doll, a specter of malevolence, vanished from custody, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unspoken fears. The house, tainted by tragedy, changed hands once more, its attic a hollow echo of past sorrows. The doll remained at large, a phantom of the night, evading capture and slipping through the cracks of reality. Detective Winters, burdened by the weight of the unsolved case, chose to depart, leaving behind a legacy tinged with shadows and half-truths. A single photograph, a remnant of the dollmaker's dark artistry, lay dormant in a sealed envelope, a silent witness to the horrors that lurked within the house's walls. And as the new owners settled into their haunted abode, a hushed whisper of laughter occasionally drifted through the stillness of the night, a reminder of the unseen forces that lingered just beyond the realm of understanding. Story 27. The gentle current whispered secrets as it meandered through the tranquil morning, the water mirroring the sky above, serene and undisturbed. A lone fisherman cast his line, lost in the rhythm of the river's soft lullaby. It was then that something caught his eye, a peculiar sight on the shore, a suitcase bobbing gently in the shallows. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than discarded belongings, a forgotten relic of the past. But as he drew closer, a pungent odor filled the air, heavy and oppressive, impossible to ignore. The case was adorned with chains, weathered by time and neglect, a silent guardian of its dark contents. Authorities descended upon the scene, their expressions grave as they pried open the suitcase's rusty clasps. What awaited them inside was a chilling tableau, a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a macabre embrace, and at the bottom a haunting message etched in ink. This isn't the first. Detective Sarah Mercer, a figure of quiet strength, surveyed the somber scene, her features masked by a delicate handkerchief against the stench of tragedy. The victim, a woman in her prime, her once vibrant visage now muted by the river's embrace, bore the markings of a life abruptly extinguished. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously documented every detail, a silent witness to the unraveling of a life cut short. But amidst the grim tableau, it was not the method of disposal that gripped Mercer's attention, but the eerie sense of care bestowed upon the victim. Manicured nails, freshly styled hair, adorned in garments of opulence. She was not discarded, Mercer murmured, her gaze drawn to the gentle ebb and flow of the water against the shore. She was presented. The woman was identified as Catherine Walsh, a figure of stature in the world of real estate, known for her prowess in selling the most exclusive properties. Divorced, childless, a solitary figure in an affluent neighborhood, she was the epitome of success and secrecy. Colleagues spoke of her with reverence, painting a portrait of ambition and precision, her disappearance a jarring anomaly in her carefully curated existence. As investigators delved into Walsh's immaculate abode, a portrait of perfection emerged, every corner a testament to order, every surface pristine. Yet a whisper of disarray lingered in her home office, a drawer slightly ajar revealing a leather-bound journal. The final entry spoke of unseen eyes, of a lurking presence that shattered the illusion of security. In the digital realm, a haunting echo reverberated messages from the shadows, words of voyeuristic intimacy that clawed at the edges of Walsh's reality. Detective Mercer pieced together the fragments, drawing a connection between the meticulous staging of the crime and the unsettling messages that lingered in the digital ether. A pawnshop owner's recognition of a stolen emerald necklace unraveled the tapestry of deception, leading investigators to a man of unassuming demeanor, Michael Linden, a custodian of shadows, a weaver of twisted destinies. Surveillance footage painted a chilling portrait of Linden's obsession, his quiet presence a mask for the darkness that lurked within. Within the confines of Linden's modest dwelling, a chamber of horrors awaited, the walls adorned with stolen moments, captured in secret, a shrine of twisted devotion. Each victim, each life extinguished, laid bare in meticulous detail, a testament to a mind unhinged. In the frigid confines of the interrogation room, Linden's facade crumbled, revealing a man consumed by a warped sense of perfection. His victims, flawed in his eyes, were mere canvases upon which he sought to impose his twisted vision of beauty. And as the truth unfurled, the shadows receded, unveiling a tapestry of terror woven in the quiet corners of everyday life. As the gavel fell, sealing Linden's fate with a sentence of eternal solitude, Detective Mercer found closure in the resolution of the case. Yet beneath the veneer of justice, questions lingered like ghosts in the night. What darkness lay dormant within the hearts of men? What unseen fractures drove them to unspeakable acts? The river, a silent witness to the passage of time, carried on its journey, its waters a mirror to the shifting tides of fate. And in the precinct, amidst the hum of fluorescent lights, lay reminders of a darkness that dwelled in the most unexpected of places, a chilling testament to the fragile veil that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, the mundane from the macabre.